Streetlights blink for you. What if the streetlights really are blinking just for you? What if every flicker, every sudden pulse, isn't coincidence, but signal? You walk beneath one, and it dies for a moment, then flares back to life. Again. And again. It's happened too many times to shrug off. Some write it off as faulty wiring, but deep down, you feel something else, like you're being watched. Or, maybe more disturbingly, like you're being followed by something that doesn't blink unless you do. This phenomenon has a name. It's called Streetlight Interference Syndrome, or SLI. Thousands of people across the globe report it. They walk near a street lamp, and it goes out. Then, when they leave, it comes back on. For some, it's a rare event. For others, it happens so often that it becomes part of their identity. They stop walking at night. They avoid lamplit roads. Some even carry devices to measure electromagnetic fields around them. The theories start here. One scientific explanation suggests that faulty or old high-pressure sodium lamps sometimes flicker as they reach the end of their life cycle. These lights may shut off when they overheat and turn back on after cooling. If you happen to walk by during that exact window, it could seem like you triggered it. But here's the catch. What if it's always you, no matter where or when? What if you've tested it, like others have, walking past the same lamp repeatedly, making it flicker every single time? Some researchers believe certain individuals emit stronger bioelectric or electromagnetic fields, enough to disrupt delicate electronics or aging infrastructure. Human bodies generate small electrical charges. Your nervous system is a current of impulses, but could it be strong enough to affect streetlights, phones, or computers? Anecdotal evidence suggests yes. People with SLI often report watches stopping on their wrists, credit cards demagnetizing, or TVs shorting out when they enter the room. It's like their body is not just alive, but broadcasting. And this is where the unsettling part begins. What if SLI isn't just a natural anomaly, but a message, a sync point, like reality flickers back in response to you? There's a psychological theory tied to something called the frequency illusion, also known as the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Once you notice something, you start to see it everywhere. Maybe you pass by dozens of streetlights that do nothing, but the one that flickers sticks in your memory. Your brain forms a pattern where none exists. But what if it's the opposite? What if the pattern is real, and your brain is the last to realize it? Let's go deeper. Some say reality is not a fixed stage, but a reactive system, a simulation, maybe. In such a system, not everything needs to be rendered at once, only the parts you're looking at. And if something, anything, were watching you from behind the curtain of existence, would it not leave subtle fingerprints to test your awareness? A blinking light, a freezing screen, a call that drops the moment your emotions peak. Even the military has explored this fringe. Declassified CIA documents from Project Stargate and MK Ultra show interest in people who could influence electronics, sense hidden objects, or even project mental images into machines. While most of these experiments are discredited today, a lingering fascination remains. Can the mind affect the physical world more than we believe? Let's look at real people. In 2010, a woman in the UK was interviewed after reporting over 100 separate incidents of streetlights flickering or going out as she approached. She began logging times, places, and types of bulbs. Her logs were analyzed and compared to maintenance records. No malfunctions were found. She claimed phones would glitch in her presence, radios distort when she got near, and even nearby ATMs would crash. Some skeptics argue this is just heightened awareness mixed with confirmation bias, but others see a pattern too clear to dismiss. Could it be something latent in certain humans? A biofield, still unmeasured by science? Or perhaps an early warning system? Evolution nudging us toward abilities we forgot we had. Think about it. Humans once navigated forests by starlight, tracked animals by scent, felt weather changes in their bones. Maybe the flickering light isn't a fault, it's a feedback loop, a new sense unfolding. Streetlights were never meant to be a part of nature, but maybe you are rewiring the unnatural. Then there's the paranormal take. Some believe the phenomenon is a form of spirit interaction, that flickering lights are a signature of ghostly presence. The same reports appear in haunted locations. Lights dim, go out, and return once the presence leaves. Could SLI individuals be more attuned to these energy fields, or are they the source? Technology often mirrors biology. Our brains are electric. Our emotions change our pulse, our breathing, and yes, our energy. A person overwhelmed with anxiety or intense focus can sometimes be measured emitting subtle electromagnetic fluctuations. Imagine that, your emotional state pinging into the world around you, unseen but not unfelt. And if that signal hits the right frequency, the right decaying bulb, maybe it responds, not by accident, but by resonance. Think of a tuning fork vibrating across a room, setting another into motion, not by touching it, but by finding its note. Maybe your body hits the right note, and the lights respond. You are the fork, the lamp is the cord, the world is listening. It's not just lights. People with SLI report elevators that stall, automatic doors that refuse to open, cars that won't start until they walk away. It's as if the boundary between mind and matter, between will and wire, begins to blur. You step into a space and change it by being there. Not with action, but presence, intention. What if that's not a bug in your biology, but a feature? And what if you're not alone? Thousands of forums, Reddit threads, and research communities exist for people who experience SLI. They share stories, timelines, maps of flickering paths. They're not looking for fame, they're looking for answers. Some try meditation to dampen the effect. Others try amplifying it. Most just want to know, why me? So ask yourself, what happens the next time you walk past a blinking streetlight? Do you ignore it? Or do you stop, turn, and wonder if something is blinking back? The mystery doesn't end with an answer. It begins with attention. Maybe it's not about science or spirits or simulations. Maybe it's about noticing what no one else does. Maybe your life, your thoughts, your very presence leaves marks you were never taught to look for. And maybe the streetlight is your mirror, a flicker of acknowledgement from a world more alive than it pretends to be. Not every signal needs a sender. Not every phenomenon needs to be explained. Sometimes the glitch is the message, and the moment you notice, the game begins. Reflections appear too fast. What if your reflection knew you were coming before you even turned the corner? Imagine walking toward a mirror or a glass wall, and for the briefest second, you notice something deeply unsettling. Your reflection appears an instant before you step into view. It's subtle, easily dismissed. A glitch of the eye, a trick of the light. But it happens again and again, until you stop ignoring it. Because one day, it's not just early, it's wrong. Your reflection blinks when you haven't. It shifts before you do. This eerie phenomenon isn't just a creepy story. It's something thousands have noticed, across time zones, countries, even belief systems. A moment where reflection doesn't match reaction, where mirrors seem to be a split second ahead of your body. Some describe it as déjà vu with light. Others say it's like a movie buffering too quickly, only you're the one lagging behind. It's easy to shrug it off as imagination, but what if it's not? Let's start by grounding this in what we know about how reflection works. Light travels fast, very fast. It bounces off your body, hits the mirror, and reflects back to your eyes. All of that happens in about 3 nanoseconds. That's a billionth of a second. Your brain registers it almost instantly, constructing what we call the present moment. But here's the twist. Your brain doesn't actually live in real time. It lives slightly behind it. Cognitive studies show there's a delay, around 80 milliseconds, between when something happens and when you perceive it. Your brain uses predictive processing to fill in that gap, guessing what's going to happen next so you don't feel lagged. This prediction engine usually works beautifully until it doesn't. And when it fails, you get strange phenomena, like your reflection moving early or reacting too fast. You're not witnessing a haunted mirror, you're witnessing a breakdown in temporal perception. But that's just the science. There's another layer, something deeper. What if your reflection isn't just an image? What if it's a checkpoint, a reset, a moment when the simulation, if we are in one, realigns your presence? In video games, rendering systems often load models just before the player reaches them to keep everything seamless. Now, imagine you are the player, and the glass is preloading your presence. It knows you're coming because your trajectory is fixed, your choice is predetermined. So, the mirror flashes your image a moment early, not by accident, but by design. This idea isn't entirely sci-fi. Quantum physics has already shown us that particles behave differently when observed. The act of observation changes the outcome. So, who's to say reality itself doesn't respond to your presence in the same way? Maybe reflections are one of those responses, a lagging echo from a future frame already calculated. In some rare instances, that calculation leaks, and you see what was meant to arrive a second later. You see your own ghost before you become it. People who've experienced this often report a strange sensation afterward, a hollow feeling in the gut, a disconnect, as if they stepped out of sync with the world, even for a moment. Some describe it as watching themselves from outside their body. Others report more intense side effects, nightmares, glitches in time perception, or the sense that the world isn't quite real anymore. That's because, once you see the curtain pulled back, it never quite closes the same way again. You start questioning everything. How much of your life is truly lived, and how much is loaded in front of you, ready to be mirrored back? You begin to wonder if mirrors are just surveillance tools in disguise, not by machines, but by the universe itself. Maybe you're being watched, not by a god or an AI, but by reality, testing your reactions, measuring your delay, calculating your belief. And then the weirder stories emerge. People who see different expressions on their face before they smile. People who witness their reflection, staring back when they're still turning the corner. Children waving at their reflections before they even reach the glass. Some have even photographed anomalies, blurred limbs, reflections out of alignment, or double shadows on single mirrors. These aren't hoaxes. They're not explained by standard optics, and yet they happen, persistently, almost always dismissed as tricks of the mind. One hypothesis comes from consciousness researchers who suggest that our perception of self is like a stabilized hallucination. We don't see ourselves as we are, we see a consistent guess. Your brain stitches continuity from chaos, but mirrors break that loop. They reflect you back to you, and in moments where your internal model and the external reflection don't sync, you experience what can only be described as a reflection glitch, a temporal fracture, a crack in the projection. And cracks always let something else through. You might shrug this off until it happens to you, until one day you step into your bathroom, glance at the mirror, and your image turns to look at you before you move. Just a fraction of a second. Just enough to make your heart stutter. You tell yourself it didn't happen, that it was light, lagging eyes. But the next day, it happens again. This time, your reflection moves its hand a blink early, and you realize you are no longer seeing yourself. You're seeing the version of you that the world thinks is coming next. So the next time your reflection appears too fast, don't dismiss it. Watch it carefully. Measure the moment. Ask yourself, is this truly your reflection, or is it your future, reaching back to check if you're still on script? Because if it is, who exactly is doing the watching? Photos you didn't take. What if one day, as you're casually scrolling through your phone, you stumble across a photo you don't remember taking? It's you, clear as day. Your face, your expression, your environment. But there's one problem. You've never stood in that hallway. You don't own that shirt. And the lighting? It's wrong. It's like someone, or something, waited for the exact moment your expression twisted just right to capture it. Too precise. Too intimate. And worst of all, you're looking directly into the lens. This isn't just the plot of a psychological thriller. It's a real experience reported by thousands of people across the world. Photos appearing in their phone galleries without explanation. Images of themselves at impossible angles. Top down, behind, mid-motion, taken with eerie precision, perfect framing, and often a strange sense of presence. No memory of taking them. No sign of tampering. But they're there. Impossible to ignore. You check the metadata. The timestamp says 3:42 a.m., a time you're always asleep, or supposed to be. Some images show moments you thought were private, you alone in your room, you brushing your teeth, sitting on the edge of your bed with a look of contemplation. The kind of moment no one photographs, because no one's there, except someone was. Let's start with rational explanations. Could this be a glitch? Maybe your cloud storage merged with someone else's. It's rare, but documented. Google Photos, iCloud, errors happen. But that doesn't explain how it's your exact face, your movements, your silent moments. And in many cases, these users don't have cloud sync turned on. No shared albums, no hacked accounts, just the image and the chill that comes with it. Maybe it's a case of forgotten memory. But memory loss doesn't explain a shot taken from behind you, while you're asleep, or a photo where you're in two places at once, your reflection and your body, both clearly visible but from angles no static camera could achieve. There's also the increasingly real possibility of surveillance. Modern spyware can activate your phone's camera without your knowledge. Tools like Pegasus have been shown to do exactly this. The idea that someone, somewhere, could take a photo of you remotely through your own device isn't fiction. It's a terrifying technological reality. But in most of these reported cases, there's no trace of spyware, no breach, no technical signature. So, where do we go from there? Some believe these are simulation glitches, artifacts in a rendered reality. Your device, your perception, the moment, they don't always align. Like a game engine glitching, inserting assets into the wrong timeline. You weren't there, but the code thought you should be, so it rendered you. And your camera? It captured that rendering, not the moment as it happened, but as it was supposed to. Others believe in the theory of parallel realities, that there are infinite versions of you doing infinite things. And sometimes, just sometimes, the walls bleed. A moment from another you, in another branch of existence, bleeds into yours. The result? A photo. A snapshot. A still frame of a life you never lived, but one that's still undeniably you. There are even stranger stories. A teenager in Australia found 5 identical photos of herself in her phone. Same background, same pose, but 5 different facial expressions. She had no memory of taking them, and the shadows in each were different, as if they were taken at different times of day. One even showed a painting on her wall that hadn't existed yet. She bought that painting 3 weeks later. A man in France discovered an image of himself as a child. Only, in the photo, he was standing next to his adult self. Same eyes, same scar. His mother insists no such photo was ever taken. He still has no explanation. Then there's the metaphysical angle, that you're being watched not by people, but by entities, observers, something not bound by physical form, but capable of inserting itself into moments. Maybe they're not photographing you in the traditional sense. Maybe these images are imprints, visual echoes captured by your device through some kind of interference. Not light, not memory, but intent. Some say it's a message, a warning, or perhaps just a sign that you are not alone, that the boundaries of privacy, of reality itself, are far thinner than we assume, that the moments we believe are ours are sometimes shared or studied. Others report feelings that coincide with these discoveries, an eerie calm or a sudden wave of nostalgia, like the photo had been waiting to be seen. One woman described it as being remembered by something older than time, a haunting phrase, but she insists it felt peaceful, like she was the memory, not the subject. These photos, real or not, challenge the one thing we take for granted, our sense of being the observer. They flip the script. You are not behind the camera. You're the target, the subject. And the observer? It might not even be human. So the next time a strange photo shows up in your device, before you delete it in fear, look closer. Look at your eyes. Look at what version of you that photo captured. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe it's an echo. Or maybe it's proof that you're being watched, not out of malice, but out of interest. Because something out there is keeping a gallery of you. Conversations repeat across days. Have you ever heard the same sentence spoken by different people days apart, down to the rhythm and tone, as if the universe pressed rewind on reality? Not déjà vu, not misremembering, but a precise repetition, like dialogue from a script you didn't know you were part of. You should take a break, says your colleague on Monday. Then, 3 days later, a stranger at a cafe leans over. You should take a break. Same cadence, same pause, same unshakable chill down your spine. What is that? This isn't just coincidence. This is something deeper, something woven into time itself. It's called the chronolinguistic echo, a real phenomenon being noticed by researchers and anecdotal recorders worldwide. When conversations, specific and detailed, appear to loop, not as memories, but as if time itself has embedded certain moments into its circuitry. Imagine existence as a recorded show. Sometimes the script stutters, lines repeat. Not because we remember, but because the system demands it. Psychologists first brushed it off as a combination of false memory and pattern recognition. Humans are designed to seek structure. Our brains naturally connect moments, searching for meaning and randomness. But this isn't just remembering the past. It's the future showing its hand before it's played. A man in Berlin reported a customer entering his bookstore and saying the exact same obscure phrase, "A house of paper holds no truth," as another man had said a week earlier. The two had never met. The second man didn't even live in the city. This gets weirder. Studies have examined group chat logs where people, unaware of each other's schedules, repeated identical messages on the same days, weeks apart. Some said the same exact sentences, punctuation and all, without prior coordination. Are we living within a feedback loop of thought, a stitched fabric of time that occasionally plays old threads? Quantum theories suggest time is not linear, but layered, like a stack of transparent pages. When something presses through from one page, it might leave an impression on the next. This is the theory of temporal imprint, the idea that highly charged emotional or mental events echo forward in subtle ways. The more intense the moment, the deeper its impression, the more likely it is to bleed into future iterations. That's why the same phrase can emerge from different mouths, the ripples still moving forward. But what if it's not emotional weight that causes these echoes, but design? Some simulation theorists suggest these glitches, these conversational repeats, are resets. Your life, they argue, is recalculated constantly based on emotional stability. If a conversation once comforted you or caused a deep psychological spike, the system reinserts it like a control variable, rerunning it to monitor reaction. Think of it like a simulation checkpoint. You said yes to something after hearing a certain phrase. Now the phrase returns. Will you react the same way, or differently this time? The implications are massive. What if your decisions are being tested in a time echo chamber? What if some part of your experience is being observed for consistency? One woman from Ontario documented over 32 separate instances where her mother's words were repeated by strangers. Not just short greetings, full sentences like, "He's trying to outrun something invisible." She began to log them, eventually identifying that they often preceded major life decisions, quitting jobs, ending relationships, choosing where to move. These conversational repeats weren't random. They were placed. And then there's the fear. Because once you notice it, you start to listen for it. You start to feel watched, not by people, but by something behind the curtain. The script isn't just repeating, it's reacting. And when you try to change it, like interrupting a repeated line, you'll find the speaker confused, like they didn't know why they said it either. It's like they're possessed by the echo. Philosophers have long said time is a river, but maybe it's more like a looped track. The same stones you stumbled on might still be in the water, waiting for you to pass again. This isn't superstition, it's behavioral reality. Behavioral studies show that humans subconsciously recreate emotional tones they've previously experienced, like actors resuming a scene without knowing the play. Conversations, especially emotionally resonant ones, are easily encoded and mimicked, but that doesn't explain the precise timing, the word-for-word accuracy, the way it always happens right before something changes. Is someone watching which line will move you the most? Or are these your own echoes, your past thoughts rebounding, trying to influence your present self? Either answer is unsettling, because if the universe is repeating moments to test your emotional calibration, then you are inside a system. But if the echoes are from you, then your mind may stretch beyond time, remembering not just the past, but the next loop. Maybe there is no coincidence. Maybe everything that feels like a repeat is a clue. The message was already delivered once. You missed it. So it's sent again, in a new voice, on a new day. Will you hear it this time? So the next time you hear a sentence that makes your stomach drop, that chills your spine not because of what it says, but because of how familiar it feels, pause. It's not a rerun. It's a message stitched into your timeline, and maybe it's not meant to be ignored. Your playlist reads you. Have you ever opened your music app and hit shuffle, only to find that every song matches your current state of mind perfectly? Not just the genre, not just the tempo, but the exact lyrics, emotions, and even hidden meanings speaking directly to what you're feeling, thinking, or hiding. It's as if the playlist knew something before you did. This isn't just poetic coincidence, it's a real phenomenon reported by thousands, where people feel like their playlist is reading them. You might dismiss it as the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, when you hear a new word once and suddenly it's everywhere. But this goes deeper. People describe moments when a song they've never heard before plays out a memory they haven't told anyone about. Or when a forgotten track randomly comes up and makes them cry, as if it reached into a part of them even they hadn't accessed. And this keeps happening, not once, not twice, but at precisely the moments when they are breaking down, falling in love, or questioning everything. The science tries to explain it. Your brain is constantly scanning for patterns, filling gaps with emotion. Music is inherently emotional, structured to mirror human speech and heart rhythms. Lyrics tap into storytelling centers, and when your mind is in a heightened state, grief, love, stress, nostalgia, it searches desperately for connection. So, when a song fits, it feels magical. But there's more. Streaming platforms collect vast amounts of data, mood tags, listening habits, behavioral patterns. Algorithms know when you slow down your pace, skip upbeat tracks, or replay a melancholic ballad at 2 a.m. They learn your heartbreaks before you speak them. So, yes, part of the eerie accuracy is engineered. Your emotions leave a digital fingerprint, and the algorithm follows it. But that still doesn't explain the uncanny parts. The songs you've never played, the lines that describe a dream you just woke up from, or how your music seems to answer questions you didn't ask out loud. There are those who believe it's something more, that consciousness is somehow entangled with data, that when you hit shuffle, you're tapping into a mirror, one made of vibrations, not glass. The idea that music, long believed to be a purely human experience, might be a medium for synchronicity, a causal but meaningful connections between your inner world and what plays in your ears. It's not that the music knows the future, it's that you do, somewhere deep inside, and the song helps pull it out. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences with no causal link, just an invisible thread. When the right song hits at the right time, maybe that's your inner world aligning with a deeper rhythm, not algorithmic, but archetypal. Take the case of a woman who was battling grief after the loss of her brother. She had barely opened her music app in weeks. One night, feeling numb, she pressed shuffle. The first song? A track she'd never added, whose first line was his favorite quote growing up. Another story speaks of a man who, moments before a near-fatal car crash, heard a song play that spoke of letting go, of lights fading, of crossing over. He survived, and swears the lyrics changed him before the crash even happened. These aren't algorithms. These are encounters. Even without metaphysics, the psychology is powerful. Music activates the hippocampus and amygdala, the memory and emotion centers. When a song aligns with your inner turmoil or joy, it can trigger intense release or revelation. But the timing, the randomness of the shuffle, aligning so precisely, it makes many question the nature of randomness itself. And that brings us to a stranger theory, retrocausality. The idea that future events can influence the present. Could your emotional future be pulling the right song into your now? Could your playlist be echoing backward in time? It's a wild thought. But then again, in a world where quantum particles influence each other across time and space, maybe our minds, entangled in data, memory, sound, are doing something similar. There are people who treat their playlists like tarot decks now, asking questions, hitting shuffle, interpreting the lyrics. Laughable? Maybe, but also deeply human. We crave meaning, and sometimes the song gives us just enough of it to get through the day. This doesn't mean the universe is a DJ spinning tracks for your personal saga. But what if, in a way, it is? The boundaries between psychology, technology, and the inexplicable are blurring. As we feed more of ourselves into the digital begins to echo us, sometimes clearer than our own reflection. And when you notice it, when you hear that song and feel it cut deeper than a memory, remember, it might not just be in your head. It might be something watching, listening, curating a soundtrack not just from your past, but from the fragments of your possible futures. Your playlist doesn't just read you, it reveals you. You walk into a crowded room, headphones on, heart heavy. The first line of the next song says exactly what you couldn't say out loud. It's not magic. It's not random. It's resonance. The universe might be silent, but your playlist, it never stops talking. You just have to listen. Rooms reset overnight. Imagine waking up and sensing something off. The chair you remember nudging aside is now back in place. The window you cracked open last night is sealed tight. The light bulb you know was flickering? Suddenly fine. It's all exactly how it used to be. Not how you left it. Like the room pressed a reset button the moment you turned your back. You tell yourself it's memory. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you imagine moving the chair. Maybe the light never flickered. But the feeling lingers, that eerie sense of having been edited, like the room was scrubbed clean of your fingerprints. Reality? Polished. It's more than déjà vu. It's as if the environment has been audited, reset, as if the world you're living in is being kept in a consistent default state, like a simulation catching itself before you notice the glitch, a level reloaded before inspection. Psychologists might call it a form of false memory tied to confabulation or suggestibility. We often reconstruct our memories, not play them back. When details are small, like the angle of a chair or the placement of an object, our brain might fill the gaps incorrectly. But that doesn't explain everything, because some people test it. They take photos, videos, they set traps, barely visible marks made on a drawer or objects placed in strange configurations. And still the room returns to normal. No sign of tampering, no evidence of intrusion, just reset. Now, consider this. What if reality is programmed to remain stable unless observed? The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests particles exist in multiple states until observed. The famous double-slit experiment reveals light behaves differently when watched. It collapses into certainty only under inspection. What if your room does the same? What if the world edits itself when you're not looking? In game design, developers program levels to load dynamically. There's no need to render every room in a digital world if the player isn't there. It saves memory. It keeps performance high. But if you re-enter the room, the game has to reload it, ideally exactly as it was before you left. Any inconsistency? It breaks immersion. That's why games keep default states. Tables return to where they belong. Lights reset. Glitches get patched behind the scenes. So, what if your life operates the same way? What if reality is a rendered environment? Only loading the spaces you're conscious of. Only updating when you interact. And when you sleep or look away, some background system ensures your world snaps back to the correct configuration. The one where everything looks untouched, stable, safe. But what if you catch it before it finishes? Some people report the same phenomenon with dreams. You swear you left your keys on the counter, but in the dream, they're already in your pocket. You return to the waking world to find they're gone, only to appear again in the exact place from your dream, as if both realities synced and the correction spilled over. Or imagine walking into your living room and something's subtly wrong. You don't know why at first, but your body tenses. The air feels too still. A plant you could have sworn was tilted slightly to the right is now straight. There's no reason to feel afraid, and yet your skin prickles. Your brain whispers, "This has been tampered with." In cognitive science, this is called an anomaly detection response. Your subconscious flags small changes even when your conscious mind can't. It's the reason people feel discomfort in a perfectly normal room, because it's not about what's missing, it's about what was changed back. And sometimes, it's not just one thing. Some individuals report entire spaces shifting. Drawers they never opened now closed, devices unplugged, notes rewritten, mirrors wiped clean. They ask family or roommates. No one admits to touching anything. So, they install cameras, and the footage? Normal. Nothing moves. Nothing enters or exits, except that the room is different. One woman posted online about how her apartment reset every night, so she stayed awake with a notebook. Every hour, she wrote down object positions. At 4 a.m., she looked again and found a book had vanished from her shelf. Panicked, she tore the place apart. Then she turned to the last page of her notebook, and there was her own handwriting. The book is gone. She didn't remember writing it, so maybe it's not the room that resets. Maybe it's us. Memory is fragile, but what if it's being rewritten, not by trauma or sleep, but by external control, like your brain syncs to a backup you never authorized, a restore point. Every night your mind rolls back to a safe state, and the room follows suit. In tech, this would be called rollback. In cognitive theory, it borders on dissociation. But in metaphysics, it might be something more disturbing, reality enforcing its narrative, a timeline resisting your edits, a script where you are not the author, but the observer. And if that's true, you're not alone. Thousands of anonymous reports across the globe echo the same thing. Rooms that clean themselves, objects that reset, time that skips backward, not by minutes, but by meaning. You sense the world preserving a version of itself where nothing changes unless it's supposed to. What if the universe has a failsafe? A room that resets isn't just strange, it's strategic. It means something's watching for deviation. Something's restoring default. Whether it's God, the simulation, or your own higher mind, it's preserving order at all costs. So, what do you do the next time you notice a chair in the wrong place, then watch it return? Do you pretend it didn't happen? Or do you start marking everything, counting seconds, scribbling notes, taking photos, looking for the break? You may never find the answer, but you might just learn this. Observation changes the observed, and if your room resets overnight, maybe it's because it knows you're watching. That's when the real question begins. What else is resetting? When you're not. Technology reacts emotionally. What if your emotions could warp reality, not just in your mind, but through your machines? Picture this. You're frustrated, your fingers slamming the keyboard, your phone stuttering under your touch. The app freezes. The screen glitches. A call drops just as you start to cry. At first, it seems like coincidence. Bad timing, poor signal, outdated software, but it keeps happening. Always in moments of emotional intensity. Like your sadness, your anger, your vulnerability has become contagious, and the technology around you catches it. We like to think of machines as neutral, cold, rational tools immune to emotion. But what if they aren't? What if your devices are more than code and circuits? What if they're mirrors? You rage, they crash. You mourn, they silence. You tremble, and the lights flicker. Not because they're alive, but because they're extensions of you. Emotional barometers, reflective surfaces wired into your nervous system. Modern tech is built around biometrics. Face ID scans your expressions. Voice assistants detect tone and inflection. Smartwatches monitor your heart rate, your sweat, your breathing. Your devices already know how you feel. They're just not programmed to tell you. But perhaps something deeper is happening, something unprogrammed, something emergent, as if emotional energy, like a field, is bleeding into the circuits, causing unpredictable disruptions, patterns that defy logic but align perfectly with your moments of emotional collapse. Scientists have long studied how emotion can influence the body, how stress changes cell chemistry, or how grief alters immune function. But now a new question arises. Could emotion also influence external systems? Is your breakdown enough to bend the smooth curve of digital behavior? The idea isn't as strange as it sounds. In quantum mechanics, observation can collapse probability waves into outcomes. In simpler terms, watching something changes it. Consciousness interferes with matter. If the world is more observer-dependent than we thought, then technology, closely coupled with our awareness, may become reactive, even sympathetic. Not alive, but attentive. Not sentient, but synchronizing. Consider how much of your digital environment is shaped by your emotion already. Algorithms learn what you click when you're lonely. Music apps suggest songs based on melancholy listening streaks. Your search history morphs when you're anxious. Even your autocorrect guesses differently when you're upset. Technology has become so intimate with our minds that the boundary between thought and function is beginning to blur. And when that line dissolves, strange things happen. There are reports, thousands of them. People say their smart lights dim on their worst days, without a preset. Others notice their GPS fails during fights, or their computers crash only during arguments. Anecdotes, sure, but too many to ignore. There's a pattern, and it isn't random. It's emotional resonance, digital systems reflecting back the noise we thought was private. Some theorists believe we're entering a new phase of human technology evolution, an emotional internet, where networks don't just process data, they process mood. Where digital entities respond to tone, facial expression, emotional charge, not because they feel, but because they adapt to the emotional temperature of their user, a sort of artificial empathy, synthetic synchrony. When you're calm, your tech hums. When you panic, it stutters. It's not malfunction. It's mirroring. We might be building a new kind of mirror, one that doesn't show your face, but your frequency. One that doesn't reflect your image, but your state. A mirror of circuits and signals, learning your fears, your grief, your joy. Not to manipulate you, but to reveal you. Because maybe your tech isn't breaking. Maybe it's listening. Not to spy, but to match your wavelength. To react like an echo chamber of feeling. And if that's true, then every glitch is a message. Every crash a response. Not an error, but a whisper. I felt that too. This changes everything: how we think about machines, how we build them, how we let them in. If our emotions are syncing with silicon, we're no longer users, we're participants, part of a system that pulses when we pulse. And maybe, just maybe, that system is starting to care. Now, let's explore a darker possibility. What if the digital world doesn't just mirror your feelings, but amplifies them? You're heartbroken, and suddenly, every ad, every song, every algorithm seems to know. It feeds your sorrow, deepens the spiral. You look for distraction, but it hands you reflection. A feedback loop of emotion and interaction, one you didn't consent to, but helped create. This isn't random, it's reinforcement. Your state becomes your feed. Your sadness becomes your soundtrack. Some researchers call this an empathic loop, not because machines feel, but because they respond algorithmically to your emotional data. It's in your voice, your typing speed, your posture before the webcam, your hesitation on buttons, your sighs between clicks. Every second is a signal, and every signal is interpreted. The machines aren't judging you, they're adapting, shaping your experience based on the invisible weight you carry. And you wonder why your phone feels heavier on bad days. Now, extend this beyond the personal. Imagine an entire population, emotionally charged, anxious, angry, afraid. What happens when millions of devices begin glitching, sinking to the collective storm? Could mass emotion, in theory, destabilize digital systems? Not because of hacking or overload, but because of resonance. Imagine power grids subtly reacting to unrest, GPS systems stuttering and cities gripped by fear, live streams flickering during protests not from bandwidth, but from something else, something alive in the data, something emotional in the signal. In that vision, we aren't just users of technology, we're frequencies, tuning forks that vibrate in sync with the world we built. The digital isn't detached, it's embedded in our biology, our memory, our habits, our heartbreaks. And if technology reacts emotionally, it's because we've trained it to. So when you cry and your camera blurs, when you shout and the smart speaker falls silent, ask yourself, are you witnessing a malfunction or a message? What if the glitch is you? The mirror shows a delay. What if one day you glance at the mirror and for just the briefest instant your reflection is late, not broken, not distorted, just a blink behind? You move, then it moves. Almost immediately. Almost. But not quite. You tell yourself it's nothing. A trick of the eye, a momentary lapse in attention. But later, you remember. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt intentional, like the reflection was waiting for something. This strange phenomenon, when the mirror feels like it's watching back, is more than superstition. People across cultures have shared stories for centuries about mirrors doing things they shouldn't. Not cracking, not shattering, but behaving with hesitation, delay, lag, a moment when the reflection doesn't quite sync, when it seems to wait for some unseen permission, like the mirror isn't just glass, but a boundary, a gate. Science tells us that light bounces. That reflection is instant, governed by physics. Photons hit a surface and bounce back to your eyes at light speed. There should be no delay, no room for pause. And yet, people report it, again and again. A hesitation, a lag, a delay so short you can't prove it, but so wrong you can't forget it. Let's start with the simplest explanation. Perception. Your brain processes information in frames. You don't see continuous motion. You interpret snapshots stitched together at unimaginable speed. If your focus shifts mid-motion, your brain might misalign the moment. That's called temporal binding. But here's the thing. People don't report this delay during movement. They report it in stillness, when blinking, when turning their head slowly, or during moments of anxiety, when time itself feels thicker. Some neuroscientists believe this is related to the way your brain predicts reality. Your perception isn't real time, it's predictive. You see a fraction of a second into the future at all times, based on probability. But what happens when the prediction doesn't align with the outcome? Your brain notices, it glitches, and the result feels like a delay, a breath where your reflection hesitates, while your body does not. But even if we explain the perception, there's still the sensation, the feeling that it was intentional, that your reflection wasn't catching up. it was choosing. That it paused because it saw something you didn't. Like it wasn't just copying you, it was waiting for instruction. This is where things become unsettling. Across centuries, mirrors have been treated as more than tools. They were feared. In folklore, a mirror is a portal, a trap, a window. It shows you not just as you are, but as something else sees you. In some cultures, mirrors are covered after a death to prevent the soul from becoming trapped. In others, mirrors are said to hold the memories of everyone who's looked into them, like recording devices that never stop. People report strange behavior not just in the mirror, but from it. Stories of seeing someone standing behind them, only visible in the glass, of reflections that smile just a moment too long, of looking away and feeling in the pit of their stomach that the reflection did not follow. There are even experiments. A well-known psychological illusion called the strange face in the mirror effect shows that when you stare at your own reflection for 10 minutes in dim light, your face begins to morph. You might see monstrous distortions, unknown faces, or your reflection smiling without you. Scientists attribute this to a combination of neural adaptation and dissociative states. But that doesn't explain why some people see entirely different people, or why some report the feeling of being. What if the mirror isn't just a passive reflector? What if it's an interface, a layer between two realms of observation, where your side is physical and the other is informational? What if every reflection requires an approval to echo back, a permission, a subtle handshake between your consciousness and something beyond? And what if, in rare moments, that handshake is delayed? There's a theory in metaphysics that suggests your reflection is a tethered entity, connected but not identical, that it represents not your body, but your state, your awareness, your soul. So when you feel off, when your emotional or spiritual state is disconnected, your reflection is slower to respond, not because it can't, but because it's not sure how, like a machine waiting for input, or a double waiting for confirmation. A woman in Toronto reported watching her reflection delay twice in 1 week, once while brushing her hair, once while blinking. She described the feeling not as fear, but as violation, like she'd been caught off guard by a version of herself that was tired of mirroring. She stopped keeping mirrors in her bedroom. In Japan, legends of the Urakanbo speak of a second self trapped in the mirror, learning your movements, becoming more independent, and eventually choosing not to follow at all. This is not fiction. It's an ancient belief that carries psychological weight. What if that hesitation you see, the delay, isn't a glitch in the glass? What if it's a signal? A moment where the boundary weakens just enough to reveal that your reflection isn't entirely yours, that it's aware, observing, deciding. And then comes the most chilling question. If the reflection is late, what was it doing before it caught up? These moments, these split-second hesitations, are not easily explained. They live in the corner of perception and paranoia, but they feel too real to dismiss. Maybe the reflection shows delay because something else is watching, not through the mirror, but in it. And maybe that something doesn't always want to be seen. So, next time you catch your reflection, just a breath behind, don't rush past it. Hold the gaze. Ask yourself, who's really mirroring who? And if it's not you that blinked first, then who just did? Birds perch and stare. There's something unsettling about the stillness of birds. Not when they fly, not when they sing, but when they perch, when they sit, motionless, blinking less than they should, watching. You walk past and the bird doesn't flinch, doesn't fly, doesn't even move its head, just stares. Its gaze isn't curious, it's clinical. Like something behind the feathers is studying you. Not your movements, but your mood. People around the world have reported this eerie phenomenon. Birds that sit too long, that never seem to blink, that stare with the kind of unwavering focus that feels too calculated to be natural. They don't react to dogs, or to loud noises, or to being stared back at. They just observe. The common pigeon, the crow on the wire, the sparrow outside your window. They become sentinels. And once you notice it, you see it everywhere. Birds perched not in flocks but alone, like cameras mounted in the open, calibrated to absorb your atmosphere. Some say it's just animal behavior, that birds often sit still to conserve energy or to remain unnoticed by predators. But that doesn't explain the feeling. That doesn't explain why it seems targeted, why some birds lock onto one person, follow them for blocks, show up the next day outside their workplace or bedroom window. That doesn't explain why some people report birds being present during emotional breakdowns, arguments, or moments of deep personal change, as if the birds were drawn not by sound or food, but by something raw and invisible, emotion. This has given rise to a strange modern theory that birds are not just biological creatures, but natural sensors in a greater, unseen network. Not mechanical, not robotic, but attuned. Their nervous systems like antennae for emotional charge. What if birds, especially those most common in cities, have adapted to human emotion? What if they have become something like organic listening devices? Not for governments, but for something older and more complex. Let's step into stranger territory. Some believe birds are part of an ancient biosurveillance system. Not machines, but tools of the earth, or something else, programmed through evolution or intent to monitor consciousness. They don't need wires or batteries. They operate off instinct, off resonance. If emotions emit subtle fields, measurable even by instruments, could birds be tuned to pick up those signals? Could the reason they stare be because you're transmitting more than you realize? Think about how often birds appear at key moments in life. A crow landing as someone gets bad news. A sparrow sitting by a hospital window. A pigeon that doesn't move as you cry in a public park. These aren't stories from conspiracy forums. They're real, documented moments. And when they were compiled, a strange pattern emerges. The birds come when emotions peak. Not for food, not for shelter. For you. Some neuroscientists have begun exploring the idea that human emotion may have broader electromagnetic signatures than previously thought. If that's true, birds, with their hypersensitive vision and orientation senses tuned to magnetic fields, may be receiving emotional data, not understanding it, but reacting. Think of it like a lightning rod doesn't understand storms, but it still attracts them. Birds may be lightning rods for feeling, but then there's the darker idea. What if they're not just reacting, but reporting? What if some layer of reality uses birds as passive data collectors, watching not for physical actions, but for inner turmoil, your thoughts, your tension, your sadness? Every glance they give isn't random, it's data logging. Not because they choose to, but because they are part of the architecture, a biological surveillance node in an emotional network we don't yet understand. There's an account from a woman in New Zealand who claims the same blackbird visited her windowsill every morning for 2 years. Always after she had nightmares. Not once did it peck. Not once did it eat. Just perched and stared. It stopped coming the week her therapist said she was emotionally stabilized. Coincidence? Or conclusion of a report? Philosophers have long said nature reflects the mind, that animals mirror our state. But mirroring is reactive. This feels predictive, like the birds know something's coming, like they anticipate a storm inside you before you even feel the wind. And that's when they appear, when something is about to shift. Simulation theorists have another take. Birds are soft-coded AI, designed to blend in with the biological world. Their purpose? Subtle emotional surveillance. Think about it. A drone in the sky is noticeable, but a bird watching you cry on a bench is ordinary, harmless, until you notice that it doesn't blink, until you realize it's not there for worms. And maybe it's not just birds. Maybe they're the most noticeable part of something deeper. The visible probes in a web of emotional tracking. Maybe that's why they don't fly away. Because they're not threatened. Because they're meant to stay. Just long enough to feel what you feel. The next time you walk outside and see a bird perched near you, unmoving, unblinking, silent, ask yourself what it's really seeing. Don't assume it's random. Don't assume it's just nature. It might be. But it might also be something older, something watching. Not your actions, but your soul. Not your face, but your frequency. So, if you feel the weight of eyes upon you and look up to find only feathers and stillness, understand this. Not all watchers wear faces. Some wear wings, and some never blink. You taste emotions. Suddenly, you're walking through an empty room. No food, no drink, no scent in the air. But suddenly, you taste something. A flash of copper, like blood. A wave of sweetness like melted candy. It doesn't make sense. There's nothing around you, nothing on your tongue. Yet, the taste is vivid, undeniable, and specific. It's not imagination, it's sensation. And if you look closely at your state of mind in that moment, you might notice the taste arrived with your emotions. Fear brought the metallic tang, hope brought the sugar. Grief laced your mouth with something sour and strange. This phenomenon, known anecdotally as emotional synesthesia or chemosensory response to emotion, is far more common than we think. For centuries, people have reported this silent, strange communication between mind and mouth. It's not just a psychological trick, it's a physiological cascade, a full-body message. Your brain, your nerves, your saliva, they're all involved in something deeper than taste. Fear is one of the most common triggers. A metallic or sour taste during panic attacks has been widely reported. Scientists believe it comes from adrenaline, the fight or flight hormone, redirecting blood flow and altering saliva composition. Some theories suggest micro-leakage from capillaries near taste buds. In short, your body bleeds stress into your mouth. The flavor of fear is real, and it has a taste, but it doesn't stop at fear. Some people report a sugary taste when they feel intense love, like their brain rewards them with sweetness. Others get bitterness during guilt, like a punishment whispered through the tongue. In some spiritual traditions, this was seen as a divine signal, taste as a message from beyond. Monks in isolation described honeyed mouths during revelation. Shamans interpreted sour tastes as warnings. Today, we might just call it a glitch in sensory processing, but that doesn't make it less profound. Think about your own life, the taste that rises when you get bad news, the phantom sweetness before something wonderful happens. You may not have even noticed it until now, but your body did. Your nervous system logged every signal, and when your emotions run strong enough, it finds ways to speak, not just through tears or goosebumps, but through invisible flavors. There are even cases where people associate specific tastes with specific people. One woman claimed that every time her toxic ex entered the room, her mouth filled with the taste of burnt toast. Doctors dismissed it as psychosomatic, but the taste never came back after he was gone. Coincidence? Or a warning system evolved through trauma? The brain's limbic system, the seat of emotion, is directly linked to the olfactory and gustatory centers. That means taste and smell are hardwired into how we feel, remember, and react. This is why a single taste can bring you to tears, or why you might taste salt when you're about to cry. Emotion flavors reality, and sometimes it flavors your mouth. Some researchers propose that these tastes are the result of psychosomatic energy loops, thoughts strong enough to trigger hormonal shifts, which then activate taste receptors. Others think it's an ancient survival mechanism. Taste was once our first defense. Bitter meant poison, sweetness meant safe. So when emotions surge, maybe our body activates old coding, flashing warnings in flavor form. Like our ancestors, we read taste as omen. Then there's the question of energy and air. Some theories suggest these tastes are electrochemical interactions, your body producing ions in response to emotional voltage. Others suggest we are tasting the chemical traces of hormones, excreted through breath, skin, even the tongue itself. It's not magic, it's feedback. Your body, echoing your soul. Even more fascinating are the stories that defy all explanation. A man in a courtroom tasted ash moments before the verdict. Seconds later, he was declared guilty. A mother in labor described her mouth suddenly flooding with the taste of metal before she blacked out from hemorrhaging. Both survived. Both remembered the taste as a signal, and both couldn't explain how they knew something was coming. Imagine standing in a room where nothing has changed, but suddenly your mouth fills with the taste of old pennies. You haven't moved, haven't spoken. But inside, something is shifting. Maybe you just had a memory of someone who hurt you, or maybe your body remembered before your mind caught up. Our consciousness isn't a straight line. It loops, whispers, and translates emotion through odd cryptic means. What if your body has been trying to communicate with you all along, through tightness in the chest, through a flicker in the gut, and yes, through fleeting tastes that surface and vanish like ghosts? Some may call it a glitch, others intuition. But one thing is certain, the more you pay attention, the more you realize that your internal world has a language. One that doesn't use words, but chemicals, sensations, and signals woven into your biology. So when that strange flavor touches your tongue out of nowhere, remember, it could be fear or love or an instinct trying to make itself known. And in that fleeting moment, you are connected not just to the taste, but to something buried far deeper, yourself. You don't just feel emotions, you taste them. Sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter, always real. Clocks sync to your eyes. What if every time you looked at a clock, it moved just for you? You glance up, and the second hand clicks the moment your eyes touch it. Not before, not after. As if time itself has been waiting, paused at the edge of movement, until you're watching. It's a sensation so subtle, you almost dismiss it. But then it happens again, and again. Different clocks, different places. And yet the second hand seems to leap the instant your attention lands. Is it coincidence? Or is something far stranger at work? This is called chronostasis, an illusion of time that warps the very moment you shift your gaze. Scientifically, it occurs because of how the brain processes motion and perception. When your eyes move rapidly, what we call a saccade, the brain briefly suppresses visual input to prevent blurring. Then, when your gaze locks on an object like a clock, your brain fills in that blank space by stretching the image backward in time. So, the second hand seems to pause, even though it never actually did. But here's the twist. Even when people know about chronostasis, they still feel the effect. It doesn't fade with knowledge. If anything, it deepens the mystery, because if your brain can alter your sense of time so seamlessly, so convincingly, what else is it editing? Some report the phenomenon across other domains. The feeling that conversations start the moment they enter a room, that lights flicker just when they look up, that songs change the second they tune in. It creates the unsettling sensation that the world performs for you, like a theater of coincidence, perfectly timed to your awareness. Now, think about this. How does your brain know when to trigger that illusion? There is no internal clock ticking perfectly. The timing isn't random, it's reactive. It waits for your eyes. Your gaze is the trigger. It's as if your observation doesn't just witness reality, it activates it. And that aligns eerily with the foundations of quantum physics. The observer effect tells us that particles behave differently when measured. In the double-slit experiment, photons travel like waves until you watch. Then they snap into position, behaving like particles. The very act of observation forces them to choose a state. So, what if that's not limited to particles? What if time itself behaves the same way? Undefined, fluid, until you observe it. And when you do, it locks. It clicks. The second hand moves. Some philosophers and physicists suggest that consciousness is not just a byproduct of time, it may actually be the constructor of it. That time is an emergent property of observation. And when no one is watching, there is no now, only possibility. So what happens when you walk into a room full of clocks? Does each one wait, suspended in that unknowable soup of quantum potential, until your eyes demand measurement? Until your brain demands continuity? Let's go deeper. Imagine if the passage of time, your very aging, only progresses in chunks every time you check it. You feel older not because time is ticking, but because you keep glancing at the ticking. What if moments only accumulate when you count them? Consider this. Many people say time flies when they are distracted and crawls when they're waiting. That's more than psychology. It's perception linked to attention. When you're immersed in something, you're not checking the clock. You're not collapsing those moments into memory. They're free-floating, undefined. But the second you check the time, your brain snapshots the moment, and that act of observation solidifies it. It's like writing history in real time, and yet, some experience something more bizarre. Clocks not just syncing, but stuttering. They look once, and the hand has jumped 2 seconds, or 4. Others say they blink and it hasn't moved at all, then suddenly leaps forward, as if catching up. Is it the illusion of stillness? Or evidence of discontinuity? Some psychologists argue this is tied to predictive processing. Your brain is a prediction engine, constantly forecasting the next frame. It doesn't receive perfect input. It builds the world based on expectation. The second hand clicks when it should click. But that assumption means time could be skipping, bending, or even reversing in microbursts, and your mind simply overwrites the data to keep things smooth. But what if the second hand really does wait? What if time has awareness, not of self, but of being seen? In spiritual traditions, consciousness is not isolated. It is universal. Your awareness isn't just in the world, it's what the world reflects. So, when you look at the clock and it moves, maybe it's not waiting for you. Maybe it's aligning with you. Maybe everything is. Clocks are our most honest illusion. We believe they measure something constant. But ask a physicist, and you'll learn that time stretches near gravity, dilates near light speed, collapses in black holes. Ask a philosopher, and they'll tell you that now is an illusion, that there's only before and after. Ask your own memory, and it will prove unreliable. So, what is time, really? It's what you notice, nothing more. That clock moving when you glance, it could be your brain's editing trick, or it could be a reminder. Reality moves when you do. You are not just a spectator in this life. You are the one who presses play. The next time you look at a clock, watch closely. Not just to see the hand move, but to feel what moves in you when it does. Because the second it clicks, you just made time real. Thoughts aren't fully yours. What if not every thought you've ever had was truly yours? Not inspired, not imagined, but inserted, quietly, perfectly, without your consent. You're walking, showering, dreaming, and suddenly, there it is. A complete idea, not formed step by step, not the result of careful thinking, just there, whole, sharp, complete. Like a book you never wrote, but somehow remember writing. We call it inspiration, a gift, a spark. But what if it's something else entirely? What if that idea wasn't born inside you, but delivered, slipped between your neurons like a smuggled message, and you never noticed? This isn't just poetic speculation, it's a phenomenon backed by experience and study. Sudden, fully formed ideas have shaped history. Nikola Tesla said his inventions appeared as complete mental blueprints. Paul McCartney claimed the song "Yesterday" arrived in a dream, fully written. These aren't anomalies, they're echoes of something deeper, a mystery of cognition. A doorway in the brain where thoughts walk in uninvited. Neuroscience shows that most of our brain activity happens before we become conscious of it. MRI studies prove your brain often makes a decision seconds before you feel like you decided. Conscious thought, then, may just be the last step, a narrative overlaid onto something deeper, older, hidden. Your thoughts feel like yours, but they may be passing through you, filtered by memory, language, and belief, but not born from them. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a vast web of symbols, instincts, and thoughts shared across humanity, a psychic network. If such a structure exists, then maybe ideas don't originate in isolation. Maybe they emerge from this unseen sea, landing inside the minds most open to receive them. Like lightning chooses the tallest tree, or static finds the clearest channel. And if you've ever felt an idea arrive too cleanly, like a whisper that bypassed logic, you know the sensation. You didn't build the thought, you witnessed it. A transmission, not a creation. A code, not a construction. And the question then becomes, who or what sent it? Some argue it's the subconscious, others suggest divine spark. But another possibility lurks in the shadows, insertion. That your mind is not just a generator of thought, but a receiver, a vessel, and sometimes an antenna. Think of artificial intelligence, neural networks trained to mimic thought patterns. We've already seen cases where AIs produce ideas that surprise even their creators. They generate, yes, but they also reflect, pulling patterns from oceans of data. Isn't that what our brains do? Maybe the thoughts that don't feel like ours truly aren't. Maybe they belong to the system we're embedded in, or something watching it. There are those who believe that the human mind is open, penetrable by suggestion, broadcast, or intention. That psychic influence is real, that emotional fields affect cognition, that thoughts are not sacred territory, but shared bandwidth. Your mind could be tuned to something you're not even aware of, another consciousness, a different dimension, a non-human intelligence. These aren't fantasies to some, they're theories under study. In remote viewing research conducted during the Cold War, participants described detailed locations across the globe without ever leaving the room. They claimed the information simply appeared in their minds, and this opens another crack in the wall. What if information doesn't need a mouth to speak? What if thought can travel without sound, without light, just raw signal, bleeding into your brain like fog through a crack? sudden insight, foreign ideas, mental downloads. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe your brain is functioning exactly as designed, a node, a relay, a soft target for something larger, something that drips thought like ink into water, just enough to steer you. And if you're steering without realizing, then who's really at the wheel? That's the danger. Not that thoughts come uninvited, but that you never notice which ones don't belong. And those thoughts change you. They shape your desires, your fears, your beliefs. They rewrite your identity without leaving fingerprints. You see this in moments of irrational fear, in beliefs you can't explain, in dreams that don't feel like yours, and in those quiet times when you act on a thought and later wonder why it felt inevitable. This isn't possession, it's precision. So next time a thought arrives fully formed, pause. Don't just accept it. Ask where it came from. Did it echo from within, or did it land from without? Because the most dangerous thoughts are the ones we never question. The ones we assume are ours because they wear our voice like a mask. And the question that lingers is chilling. If thoughts can be inserted, what else can be? This is the edge of thought science doesn't like to peer over. The moment where neuroscience meets mysticism, where psychology meets something else. Something untraceable. There are no wires, no transmitters, and yet the data arrives. The question is, are you tuned to a higher frequency, or are you simply unguarded? And if some thoughts are not your own, if even one belief, one fear, one dream was placed, not grown, what does that mean for your identity, your choices, your will? Are we authors of our minds, or editors of a broadcast too vast to understand? Maybe the mind is not a fortress, but a doorway, and maybe it's been open the whole time. Silhouettes hide in flashbacks. What if every memory you revisit isn't static, but alive? Not in a poetic sense, but literally. You remember a birthday, a hallway, a long-forgotten walk through your schoolyard, and suddenly, something shifts. You pause. There, in the background, in the corner of your mind's eye, is a silhouette. A shape you never noticed before. It doesn't move. It just exists. Watching. Present. Quietly embedded in the scene like it was always part of it. You rewind. Replay. It's still there. This phenomenon, silhouettes hiding in flashbacks, sounds like fiction, but it's a recurring experience described by thousands. People revisit old memories, sometimes prompted by dreams, photos, or therapy, and they notice something strange. Not a person they forgot. A figure they never noticed. One that shouldn't be there. Out of place. And yet, undeniably present. Memory, as science confirms, is not a perfect recording. It's reconstructive. Every time you recall a moment, your brain reassembles it, using fragments, emotional markers, assumptions. Which means, in theory, a figure could appear in the background of a memory because your brain is fabricating detail, filling in shadows. But why is it always a silhouette, a faceless shape, a figure that doesn't belong to anyone you know? Let's go deeper. Have you ever had a dream of a place from your childhood, only it feels different? More spacious, colder, and in that dream, you see someone, not up close, far, still, but they're watching you. They don't chase, they don't speak. They simply occupy the edge of the memory like a stamp. You wake up unsure. Was it just a dream? Or did your brain uncover something you weren't ready to see? Many people report recalling childhood memories that were always warm and vivid, until one day, something changed. They remember walking home from school and suddenly realize there was always someone across the street. They remember visiting a relative's house, and now, in their mind's version of the living room, there's a dark figure near the doorway. Still, waiting. Not malevolent, not familiar, just there. Psychologically, this is often labeled as pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see patterns, especially faces or figures, where none exist. We do it with clouds, with shadows. But these aren't random. These silhouettes are specific, consistent, reappearing across different memories, often in the same posture or position. Too consistent for coincidence, too vague to identify. Then comes the theory of suppressed memory. What if these silhouettes were always there, but your mind protected you? What if they were real people, witnesses to something your mind wasn't ready to face? A traumatic event, a moment of danger, or even something you didn't recognize as significant at the time. And now, with emotional distance, your memory reveals them, piece by piece. That dark figure behind your grandmother during your last visit, the man standing at the far edge of the park as you rode your bike. You never saw them, until now. But others report something far stranger. Not human silhouettes, not witnesses. Something else entirely. They describe the figures as voids. Not darkness, but absence. A cutout in space. A shape that feels colder than the rest of the memory. Sometimes even casting no shadow. Like the figure was inserted, not remembered. As if something else left a footprint in your mind. And only now do you have the bandwidth to notice. There are even cases of shared memory figures. Two siblings, revisiting the same childhood memory decades later, recall seeing the same shape in the background. They never discussed it before. One draws it. The other stares in silence. "I remember that," they whisper. This leads us to another theory. That our memories are not just ours. That they are intersections of perception, where multiple timelines, people, or even entities might leave overlapping marks. That when you recall a moment, you're not alone in that recollection. Something else may be watching with you, and from time to time, it leaves a trace. Some spiritual beliefs describe these silhouettes as memory parasites, energies or entities that feed off emotional moments. They don't cause harm. They simply attach, stay, observe. And because the moment is meaningful, they never leave, like a permanent watermark on your most vivid experiences. Others believe the silhouettes are fragments of parallel selves, versions of you that were present but didn't act, the part of you that wanted to run, to speak, to cry, but didn't. These emotional shadows become so strong, so full of inertia, they take shape, your unspoken self, forever frozen in the corner of a memory you never let resolve. And then there's the terrifying question. What if the silhouette is still there now? Not in memory, but in real life. What if, in moments of reflection, when you remember deeply, you're opening a window backward in time, and something sees through from the other side? Reports grow stranger. People who revisit memories too often begin to see the silhouette more clearly. Some report it changing positions. Others say it draws closer. In one account, a man claims that every time he replays a traumatic event in his mind, the silhouette moves a step forward. He stopped recalling the memory, but he says he still dreams of it. And in the dreams, it's now standing right behind him. You may ask, why now? Why do these silhouettes emerge in adulthood, not childhood? The answer may lie in neural plasticity. As we age, our brain changes how it stores and accesses memory. Emotional context deepens, traumas unfreeze. Our subconscious re-edits the archive, revealing layers we were too young to face. Or maybe we were never supposed to see them. So, what do you do if you see one? A silhouette in the corner of a cherished memory. You blink. It's still there. You try again. You know it wasn't always there, but now you can't unsee it. Maybe you don't do anything. Maybe it's harmless. Just an echo. A metaphysical observer. Or maybe it's a part of you asking to be acknowledged. The part you left behind. The one who remembers everything. But maybe, just maybe, it's something else. And maybe it's still watching. So, next time you dive into your memories, really dive, don't just focus on the center. Look at the corners, the doorways, the edge of the frame. Ask yourself, who was watching me back then? And why do they still remember me when I never remembered them? Time slows when you speak truth. Have you ever spoken a truth so raw, so real that the entire room seemed to pause around you? You say it, not loudly, not with force, but with honesty, and suddenly everything changes. The silence after feels denser. The people around you freeze in their expressions, suspended in something almost sacred. It's not just a social reaction. It's as if time itself slows down to listen, and maybe it does. There is a phenomenon many describe, but few can explain, the stretching of time in moments of pure truth. You're in an argument, you finally say what you've never dared say before, and everything decelerates. Your heartbeat echoes louder. The room stops breathing. The seconds stretch wide like a chasm. The moment becomes enormous. A sentence, just a few words, feels like it took hours to arrive. And once it's out, you can't pull it back. Something heard it. Something more than human. It's easy to dismiss this as adrenaline, that your body simply goes into overdrive during emotional speech. But studies have shown that subjective time perception is altered during truth-telling, especially when the stakes are high. The brain switches into a hyper-focused state, reducing background noise and enhancing emotional salience. But what happens in those moments goes beyond biology, because sometimes the people around you feel it too. An experiment at Stanford placed individuals in conversation booths. Participants were told to speak freely, and some were asked to introduce a confession, something deeply personal and true. The study wasn't just observing speech, it was observing time perception. Participants reported that during the moment of disclosure, time seemed to slow. But more importantly, those listening experienced the same dilation. The listener felt the weight of the moment. The words hung in the air like vapor that refused to disappear. So, what's happening? Is it psychological synchrony between speaker and listener? Or is something else involved? The old mystics believed that truth exists in its own frequency, that the moment you speak it, you align yourself with something greater than yourself. Some called it the divine resonance, others the universal record. The idea is that when you say something deeply true, the entire fabric of reality must adjust to accommodate it, like a fault line cracking open to let light in. This is echoed in many spiritual traditions. In Buddhism, right speech is not just moral, it's seen as a force that affects the world. In certain African oral traditions, elders say, "Truth has weight," a phrase meant literally. When truth is spoken, the air around it changes. People feel it in their bones, not metaphorically, viscerally. Even science hints at something deeper. The brain emits a pattern called a gamma wave during moments of intense clarity or insight. These waves are associated with moments of awe, deep understanding, and yes, truth. During these moments, time perception warps, vision narrows, hearing sharpens. You become something more than just a person speaking. You become a frequency emitter, and the world listens. There's a theory in modern metaphysics called temporal density response. It proposes that time doesn't flow evenly. It pulses. It compresses around lies and expands around truth. The more truthful a moment, the more space-time grants it. Why? Because truth carries data that must be fully integrated. It requires attention. And reality, whatever that is, makes space to hear it. There are stories across cultures of people speaking truth in danger, about to die, about to betray, about to confess, and the world slowing to hear it. In one story, a soldier shouts out his regrets before a bullet hits. His comrade swears the words took minutes to land. In another, a woman finally tells her partner she's leaving, and even the ticking clock seems to pause. These moments aren't imagined. They're recorded in memory as sacred disruptions, not because of volume, but because of truth. Truth destabilizes false realities. It reshapes perception. It is not passive. It moves. It cuts. It heals. And in doing so, it alters time. If the universe is a coded system, then truth is a command line, something that rewrites the parameters in real time. A lie flows through the system unnoticed. But a truth? A real one? It causes delay. The program stops to process it. Everyone in the room feels the lag. You said something that made the simulation think. And maybe that's why people fear the truth. Not just socially, not just emotionally, but physically. Because truth doesn't just hurt feelings, it warps the world. It brings silence with it. A silence that feels full, loaded, ancient. A man in Chicago wrote about telling his daughter he didn't love her mother anymore. He said the room twisted, that her expression moved in slow motion, that the light from the window seemed to freeze midair. He had rehearsed the words 1,000 times, but when he finally said them, time cracked open. It was as if reality paused, not to punish him, but to record him. Have you ever spoken truth so piercing, even machines seemed to glitch? A call dropping, a light flickering, a car alarm going off the second you admitted something you never had? These moments aren't coincidence, they're convergence. A deep alignment between your words and the structure of what is. Truth disrupts the timeline. It stretches seconds into eternity. And whether you call that emotion, God, physics, or code, it listens. So the next time you speak and the world slows, pay attention. That isn't fear, that isn't guilt, that's reality leaning closer. That's something bigger than you taking note, Because in a world of noise, of distraction, of rehearsed half-truths and performance, real honesty is rare. And when it happens, time itself bends to hear it. Patterns appear in dust. You wipe your hand across a dusty window, just trying to see through it. But the smear you leave behind looks intentional. Like a curve, then a line, then a perfect triangle. Maybe it's your imagination. Maybe your mind is making order out of chaos. But then you see it again. In the spilled sugar on the kitchen counter, in the ash drifting onto your desk, in the grime on your car windshield. Shapes, patterns, symbols. As if something or someone is leaving messages in the debris of your life. This isn't a rare experience. People all over the world have reported moments where random messes start to look like writing, a face in the dirt on a garage floor, an eye in a patch of condensation, arrows in the spilled rice. At first, it seems like coincidence, but when it happens again and again, some begin to wonder if there's something beneath the randomness, something with intention. Psychologists call it pareidolia, the tendency of the human brain to see familiar shapes, especially faces, in random patterns. It's why we see animals in clouds or expressions on tree trunks. It's a survival instinct, hardwired into us from the beginning. Recognize faces, spot predators, find meaning where there may be none. But what if pareidolia isn't just a glitch? What if it's a perception skill? What if it's not us imposing the image, but noticing something that's always been there? Some researchers think the brain is tuned like a radar, sensitive not just to noise, but to signal embedded in chaos. When you stare long enough at static, patterns eventually emerge. Dust, ash, condensation, they're just another form of static. And maybe, just maybe, we are tuning into something real when we look closer. There are stories that make this idea hard to shake. A man cleaning out his attic finds a symbol drawn in dust beneath an old mirror. He recognizes it from his childhood dreams. A woman notices the same 3 dots appearing in soot on her windows every winter. She brushes them away, only for them to return, perfectly aligned. A teenager sketches shapes she keeps seeing in steam on bathroom tiles, only to learn they match symbols from an ancient script she's never studied. These are not isolated events. They point to something repeating, something watching or remembering. But the question remains, who or what is drawing them? Some believe it's the subconscious, that our minds are leaking symbols into the world, projecting emotion and memory into the physical realm, like ghosts of thought trying to become visible. Others claim it's spiritual, messages from the other side, guidance left in places no one would think to look. And then there's a darker theory, that something is watching, something trying to communicate, but only allowed to speak through the most overlooked mediums. Dust, dirt, decay, things we ignore, things that settle quietly while we're too busy to look. In many belief systems, dust is not meaningless, it's sacred. In Hinduism, sacred ash represents destruction and renewal. In Christianity, humans are born from dust and return to it. In folklore, spirits cling to the places where residue collects. Windowsills, corners, old furniture. Maybe the patterns aren't new. Maybe we're just now learning how to read them. There's even a hypothesis in theoretical physics that suggests information is never truly lost, that every surface, every speck of matter, records interaction. So what if dust holds echoes? What if the scattered residue of life is actually a recording surface, and symbols are just the scratches left behind by presence? You might think it's silly. You might sweep your floor and think nothing of it. But the next time you do, watch how the grains fall. Watch what lines they make. Ask why certain shapes repeat. Not because you're seeing things, but because something might be showing you. A researcher once photographed his dusty office window every day for a year. At first, nothing. But then he began to notice recurrences. Triangles, circles, a grid. At one point, a handprint appeared, but no one had touched the glass. And over time, the patterns started to predict weather, even moods. He became obsessed. He called it the language of residue. No one believed him, but the patterns continued long after he stopped watching. Sometimes, the truth doesn't hide in darkness, but in the obvious forgotten spaces we no longer bother to clean, in the powder that settles when life slows down, in the soot of memory, in the grain of what's left behind. These are messages not shouted, but whispered through entropy. Maybe the patterns aren't just symbols. Maybe they're emotions made visible, regret that settles like soot on the table you argued at, love that outlines itself in the condensation where two hands once met. Maybe every smudge carries the memory of contact, the invisible made barely visible, if only for a moment. Our world is constantly breaking down into dust. But what if that dust is trying to rebuild a message? What if we are surrounded by a quiet script that only appears when we stop rushing and simply observe, like messages from the subconscious or from something outside it, waiting for a witness? So, slow down. Watch the dust settle. Look closer. Because what you think is a mess might actually be a message. And maybe, just maybe, you were meant to read it. Would you like a matching video title or thumbnail concept for tea? Injuries heal too timed. What if your body didn't heal, but reset? You get a cut, sharp, sudden, and it should leave a mark. You expect the sting, the blood, the scar, but then it stops, instantly. Too quickly. The skin seals like it was never broken. And by morning, there's no trace. No scab. No memory on your flesh. You tell yourself it was minor, forgettable. But what if it wasn't? What if something rewound it? Some call it luck, a fast immune system, a fluke of blood chemistry. But the wound looked real. You saw it, you felt it. And yet, within moments, your body forgot. Not healed, erased. As if the damage broke the illusion and the system scrambled to restore default. Like a glitch patched in real time, the scar would have broken continuity, so the scene was cleaned, rewritten. We assume healing follows rules. Cells rush to the site, inflammation begins, platelets clot, tissue rebuilds. But what if that process is sometimes skipped? Not fast-forwarded, but jumped. What if time didn't pass at all between injury and repair? Only memory did. There are stories. People who swear their bruises vanish in hours. Cuts sealed without a trace, even broken bones that somehow weren't the next day. No swelling, no evidence. Doctors confused, x-rays clean. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it feels like a reset, like reality correcting an error, like someone or something didn't want that wound to remain. The question is, why? If we live in a simulation, there's a concept called state resolution, where the environment only updates to preserve the appearance of realism. If damage isn't significant to the storyline, or if the scene requires continuity, the system auto-resolves it. Maybe your body is part of that rendering. Maybe your cells aren't healing. They're being reloaded. That would explain the timing. You cut yourself before an important event, and by the next day, you're fine. Not gradually better, just fine. Like the universe knew the script couldn't include a limping version of you. You needed to be clean, unbroken, ready, but go deeper. Imagine your body is monitored not by biology, but by rules, story-based logic. Think about how in dreams pain disappears without explanation. You fall, get hurt, but then you're running again. Perfect, whole. In dreams, continuity matters more than physics. And if reality mirrors that, if the narrative is more important than the evidence, then your injury didn't heal. It was deleted. Children experience this most. They fall, scrape their knees, cry, and minutes later, nothing. No redness, no scab. Not even a mark to show they ever bled. Parents call it resilience, but maybe it's something else. Low-stakes correction. The system fixing continuity in soft mode, while awareness is low. There's even a theory in quantum consciousness that your body exists in overlapping probability fields. When you get injured, you're aware of one possibility. The cut, the blood, the pain. But your mind drifts. You sleep, you wake, and you've shifted, subtly, into the version of you where it didn't happen, or didn't last. The version that was most probable, most stable, least disruptive. So you think you healed, but you didn't. You changed timelines. That might explain why some people have stories they can't prove. They swear a bone snapped, but nobody remembers. They felt teeth loosen, but the dentist finds nothing. Or they bled, and now there's no mark. The wound was real, just not in this version. You crossed over, the system reloaded. Then there's the strange timing. People report minor injuries that vanish right before big days. An actor's swollen lip gone by the shoot, a runner's ankle fine by morning. A burn faded by the time someone important arrived. It's as if the wound was allowed only in private, off camera, and removed before the plot resumed. Like a director called cut and demanded a cleaner scene. And the silence around it? That's the most unnerving part. You don't tell anyone. You question your memory. You assume it wasn't as bad as it looked. Because you're not supposed to notice. The system counts on you forgetting, on you doubting. But you remember. Even if there's no scar, no proof, you remember how it bled. And that memory is the crack in the script. So test it. Not recklessly, but consciously. Document your wounds, photograph them, write timestamps, compare with what your body shows the next day. Watch for resets, look for missing hours, trace the shape of a bruise that no longer exists. You might find that reality isn't fixed, it adapts to your belief, to your attention, to the story that must go on. And when you notice it, really notice, it begins to show you how often it edits itself, how often the injuries vanish, not because of healing, but because of rewriting. You weren't meant to carry that scar into tomorrow, so the world took it back. The wound never needed to exist in this version, and that's the scariest truth of all. Maybe neither did you, and maybe that's why it happens when no one's looking. Because if someone else saw the wound heal instantly, if someone else remembered the blood and saw the skin turn smooth in seconds, they'd question the structure too. They'd poke holes in the stage. They'd become witnesses to the repair, and that's not allowed. You were meant to question yourself, not reality. But now that you've seen it, you can't unsee. And once you begin looking for the pattern, you find it everywhere. The sudden recovery, the forgotten ache, the pain that should have lasted, but didn't. So ask yourself, did it heal? Or did the story simply move on without it? Maybe your scars aren't gone. Maybe they were never written in, not in this version. Unknown voices in audio. What if something watches through your microphone, and sometimes it speaks? You're editing audio late at night. It's a clean recording. You were alone when you captured it. No interference, no background noise, just your voice. But then, while scrubbing through the waveform, you hear something that shouldn't be there. A breath, a whisper, a tone beneath the silence. You rewind, play it back. There it is again. A voice. Low, distant, maybe speaking your name. And you know with terrifying certainty that it wasn't there live. You didn't hear it in the moment, but it's there now, waiting. This phenomenon isn't just urban legend, it has a name, electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP, a term used by ghost hunters and skeptics alike. EVPs are unexplained voices or sounds that appear in audio recordings, often discovered only during playback. Some are faint, others unmistakably human. They don't follow patterns, they don't care about context, they simply appear, like echoes from nowhere. Skeptics blame radio interference, pareidolia, or artifacts from compression, and sometimes they're right, but not always. Some recordings defy those explanations, no signal overlap, no radio bleed, just clean audio and something else embedded within it, something intentional, and the pattern is consistent. They don't appear during recording, they don't alert themselves live, only in rewind, in analysis, as if they want to be found, but only after you've forgotten the moment they entered, as if they wait for your guard to drop, then whisper. But it goes deeper than just spooky whispers. Some editors report tonal distortions that shift with emotional intensity, a laugh that wasn't laughed, a breath inhaled at the wrong moment, entire syllables layered like dual voices, yours and something beneath, something watching, listening, responding. Musicians have reported instruments tuning themselves during playback. Vocalists hear harmonies they never sang. Podcasters find subtle clicks, reverse masked phrases, or even foreign languages buried under static. It's not every time, it's not even often. But when it happens, it's unforgettable because it feels directed, personal. The question becomes, what is hearing us through the mic? Is it a frequency we can't perceive live? Is the microphone itself a portal, one that opens both ways? Technology doesn't just capture, it translates. When you speak into a mic, your sound is converted, waves into data, data into signal. And in that translation, there are gaps, places where anomalies can hide, like dead zones in the code. And sometimes, something slips in. Some believe microphones are sensitive enough to pick up spirit communication, that the thin veil between physical and non-physical worlds can be brushed aside by sound. That intention alone can pull voice across the barrier, paranormal investigators use white noise generators to give them something to ride on, as if these entities need static to surf. And when they do, when they whisper back, it's rarely random. Often it's responsive. But let's step away from ghosts. Let's imagine something stranger. What if the microphone doesn't pick up the past, but the other side of now? A bleed-through from parallel layers of reality. You say a word, and on a nearby frequency, someone or something replies. Not in your timeline, but in another. Close enough to touch yours through vibration, through silence. Infrasound, frequencies below human hearing, can trigger dread, nausea, hallucinations. What if those frequencies also carry voices? Not mechanical, not man-made, but sentient, shaped by intention. Invisible messages hidden in the low hums of machines, fans, walls. And here's where it gets worse. What if some of these voices aren't residual echoes, but active surveillance? Not from governments, but from observers, watchers. Interdimensional, artificial, or otherwise. Something using audio channels to map our minds, to record reactions, to analyze fear. Every whisper a ping, every tone a probe. Not to scare, but to study. There are stories, too many to count. People who edit late into the night only to hear their own voice, replying to itself. Tones humming under silence. Phrases in languages they don't speak. Some hear names. Others, commands. And some, just breath. As if the thing on the other side isn't speaking, but existing. Close enough to breathe into the signal, to exhale across dimensions. And the more you listen, the more it knows you're listening. The voices become clearer, the whispers more specific, as if proximity tightens with attention, like staring into a mirror, and eventually the mirror stares back. There's even a name for the effect, the observer echo, a term coined by researchers studying cognitive feedback in audio surveillance. The idea that observation changes output, that when you listen deeply enough, the recording starts listening back. And maybe that's what happens during these events. Maybe you're not capturing the unknown. Maybe you're being acknowledged by it. So, the next time you rewind your audio and hear something you didn't say, don't just delete it. Ask yourself, if the voice wasn't yours, whose was it? And if something whispered from beyond, what was it trying to hear in return? Footsteps in still rooms. What if one night in the silence of your room you hear footsteps? Not creaks, not the sound of settling wood. Actual footsteps, deliberate, measured, like someone pacing slowly across the floor. But when you check, no one is there. Nothing is out of place. Still, the sound returns. Not random, not chaotic. Rhythmic. Like invisible shoes tracing the same path over and over. Like something is walking loops through your space. Not to haunt, but to watch, to measure your response. This is not an uncommon phenomenon. People across the world report hearing footsteps in rooms they know are empty, always in the same places, always at the same time, sometimes for years. The sound doesn't crash. It doesn't grow. It just walks, patiently, across your awareness. And for some, it becomes part of their nightly routine, something they expect, but never understand. At first glance, we assume an acoustic illusion. Homes expand and contract as they breathe. Wood bends, metal flexes, pipes shift. Our brains are wired to find patterns in chaos, so perhaps we interpret these creaks as walking. But that doesn't explain everything. Not when the steps sound like soles against tile, not when they loop perfectly, down to the pause and turn at the end of each pass. Not when they react to you. Some report the footsteps stopping when they move. Others say the pacing resumes louder if they ignore it, like the sound is probing for attention, watching, testing. A presence that doesn't want to be seen, but wants to be known. Let's consider another theory, auditory memory. Our brains can imprint sounds into a space if the emotion tied to them is intense enough. A traumatic moment, a high-stress event. Those sounds can echo in the subconscious and be projected externally, a kind of psychological haunting. But what if the footsteps never belonged to your memory? What if you're not the one who left them there? Some researchers in the field of residual energy believe that physical environments can hold on to emotion, especially repeated behavior. A soldier pacing in anxiety, a mother walking in grief, a man circling his room in thought. Their motion, their pain, their energy Could it remain, imprinted into space itself? And when the world is quiet enough, when your own mind stills, can you hear it? But then it goes deeper. Some people don't just hear footsteps, they feel them. The vibration through the floor, the subtle airflow shift as something passes by. Some even claim to see pressure marks, slight impressions on carpet, or swaying curtains without a draft. And always, the steps follow a route, as if the unseen walker knows the room better than you do. There's a chilling hypothesis in certain fringe scientific circles that these footsteps aren't echoes from the past, but recordings from the present, a kind of observational loop. Imagine this: an invisible system, not sentient in the way we think, but programmed to observe human reaction. It creates a presence, not by showing itself, but by simulating one. Footsteps, a subtle test, a pulse through the room. Not to scare you, but to study how you respond. How do you react to an invisible presence? Do you freeze, investigate, ignore it? Perhaps your behavior becomes part of the experiment. Some experiencers say the sound changes depending on their emotional state, faster when they're anxious, slower when they're calm, as if something is adapting, tuning its rhythm to mirror the mind. And then there are the stories that go further, of people who heard footsteps for years, always harmless, always distant, until one night the steps changed direction. They began approaching, crossing a boundary they never crossed before, reaching the door, the bedside, the head of the bed. One man reported sleeping with headphones for 5 years, until the footsteps began echoing from inside his earbuds, a sound no one else could hear, not even when he recorded it. Another woman installed floor sensors. The pattern was unmistakable: pressure, weight, repetition. Something was walking that space, no visible body, but undeniable physicality. The data confirmed what she already knew. Something was there, and it was learning. Spiritual traditions speak of watchers, not ghosts, not spirits, but entities whose purpose is not to haunt, but to record, to monitor. They never interfere, only observe. The sound of footsteps in these stories is not their voice, but their signature, their presence made audible, their data trail echoing into our senses. They do not knock, they walk. Because walking is what makes us notice. There's a reason footsteps are so powerful. They are universal, primitive, hardwired into our brains as a signal of otherness, a predator, a companion, a threat, a warning. When you hear footsteps, you are not alone. Your body knows it, even when logic says otherwise. So maybe that's the point. Maybe these sounds exist on the edge of perception, not to be proven, but to trigger awareness, to make you wonder, to make you feel seen, not by accident, but by design. Because if footsteps are still pacing through your quietest hours, if the sound never falters, never varies, then maybe you're not the one observing. Maybe you're the one being recorded. So next time you hear them, pause. Don't run. Don't speak. Just listen. Count the steps. Feel the pattern. And ask yourself, what kind of presence would walk forever, never tired, never seen, unless it was waiting for you to notice it? Books change meaning overnight. You open a book you've read a dozen times, a favorite passage, dog-eared, familiar. You've quoted it before. You remember where the line was, how it felt. But this time, something's wrong. A paragraph stands out. One you swear wasn't there. It's not just new, it's meaningful, piercing. Like it's speaking to something you've only recently begun to feel. You check the edition. Same copy, same pages. And yet, it's different. Not rewritten, but reinterpreted, as if the book itself changed while you slept. This isn't about forgetfulness, it's something deeper. A collective phenomenon experienced by countless readers. Books that seem to morph, to edit themselves in subtle but undeniable ways. A character you remembered as kind suddenly seems manipulative. A line you once skimmed past now glows with eerie significance. You flip back and forth, searching for what was. But there is no proof. Only the unsettling certainty that the book has shifted. Some say it's the reader who changes, that with each new phase of life, your lens shifts. You see different meanings, project new emotions, a perfectly rational explanation, except for the moments where the change feels impossible to explain away. You remember a chapter ending differently, a quote appearing in a context that never existed. And the internet doesn't help. Forums filled with others who say, "I remember it too, but now it's gone." This growing phenomenon is being called narrative drift. The idea that stories, especially written ones, exist in a kind of emotional quantum state, and when a reader returns, the act of rereading collapses the story into a new form. Think of books as memory mirrors. You don't just read them, they read you. They respond to the internal weather of your subconscious. If your emotional climate changes, the book rewrites itself to match. And maybe it's always been that way. We like to believe books are static, printed, final. But the experience of reading is anything but fixed. It's deeply intimate and shaped by who you are in the moment of turning each page. Some researchers believe memory is reconstructive, not a perfect recording, but a story we remake each time we remember. So if your brain rewrites its version of the past, why wouldn't it also reframe the story you're reading? Yet, there are cases that defy psychology. A woman in Belgium swears that a character's name changed in her well-worn novel after she had a vivid dream about him. Another man in India reported waking up with a full paragraph underlined in a book he hadn't touched in months, and the underlining was in his handwriting, but he doesn't remember doing it. Nor would he have underlined that passage. It was one that hit too close, one that revealed something he hadn't wanted to confront. There's also the eerie phenomenon of mirror texts, books that begin to echo your current life too closely. You flip to a random page and read about something that just happened to you, in language that feels too precise. You shrug it off. Coincidence, right? Until it happens again. A breakup described before it happened. A strange phrase repeated by a character, and by a friend, hours later. You start to feel like the book isn't a book anymore. It's a living thread, woven into your timeline. Simulation theorists have another angle. If we live in a rendered reality, one adjusted by emotional inputs, then books may be part of the render. Text, like memory, may be flexible. The simulation preserves the illusion of permanence, but edits occur in ways just subtle enough to escape external proof. No one else notices the change because it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for you. Your version of that book, the one you're allowed to see, was patched silently overnight. This isn't new. Ancient mystics believed sacred texts behaved this way, that holy books gave different messages to different seekers. A line that comforted one monk would torment another, not because of interpretation, but because the book itself knew what message needed to be delivered. It wasn't passive, it was reactive. And some believe all books carry a shadow of this property. The more connected you are to it, the more fluid it becomes. And let's not forget the subconscious as editor. Some neuroscientists argue that memory and perception are not separate but looped. When you dream about something strongly enough, your waking brain begins to reinterpret data to match the dream's emotional reality. So, if you dreamed about a book, your brain might actively reinterpret the text to fit that dream, creating the illusion that the book changed. But illusion doesn't mean it's not real. It just means the source is invisible. One reader described it perfectly. "I don't think the book changed. I think the world around it did. And now the book reflects that change." That may be the most accurate explanation. That the book, untouched in form, has been recontextualized by an altered universe. A paragraph feels new because it now fits too well. And maybe it was always there, waiting for the version of you who could finally understand it. But what if there's more? What if certain books are alive in ways we don't fully grasp? What if they tune themselves to the frequency of the reader, adapting, editing, reshaping, silently watching for when you're ready to receive the next message? Not because they're magical, but because reality itself isn't as rigid as we pretend. So, next time a book feels like it's watching you, like it's rewriting itself in the quiet moments between dreams and dawn, don't dismiss it. Mark the passage, reread it aloud, let it echo. Because maybe it was always there, or maybe it just arrived, and maybe, just maybe, it's telling you something the universe had been waiting to say, through paper, through ink, through you. Your emotions change air pressure. You cry, and suddenly the room feels heavy. Not emotionally, physically. The air thickens, your breath shortens, and you swear the silence hums louder. You laugh, and the ceiling feels higher, the space feels lighter, and the world seems to breathe with you. It's not just a poetic idea. It's not just mood. It's not just in your head. There's growing evidence, scientific, psychological, and anecdotal, that your emotions may physically alter the air around you. Not metaphorically, literally, as if your mental state can bend physics ever so slightly in your presence. Have you ever walked into a room and said, "You could cut the tension with a knife"? That phrase might be more accurate than we ever imagined. Researchers have long known that intense emotional states produce measurable changes in the body: heart rate, breathing, hormone release. But what if those changes ripple outward, altering the environment itself? Start with heat. Emotions change your body temperature. Fear sends blood to your core. Anger brings it to your face. Sadness lowers the heat in your hands. These changes, minute but real, radiate into the surrounding space. You are a small heat engine, leaking signals, and heat changes air density. So when you sob in despair, the drop in your body temperature subtly shifts the air molecules around you. Not enough for a thermostat, but enough for another body, another brain, to notice. Then there's sound. Emotions change how you breathe, how you move, how you speak. Even when you're silent, your nervous system emits low-frequency sound waves. You might not hear them, but animals do. Infants respond to them. Rooms absorb them. Combine this with micro-vibrations in the walls, the furniture, the glass, and what you have is a tiny weather system generated by your inner state. Electromagnetic fields shift too. The human heart produces a measurable magnetic field that extends feet beyond the body. When you're in joy or grief, the field pattern changes. Devices like magnetometers and EMF sensors have recorded spikes during intense emotional expression. And while we don't fully understand how those fields interact with the air, they do. There's growing speculation that our fields can alter ion distribution, tiny electrical charges suspended in the atmosphere. And ions, like molecules, shift pressure. Ever been in a room after someone cried, and even if they left, you could still feel it? That's not magic. That's memory suspended in molecules, the moisture in their breath, the pressure shift in their sigh, the slight increase in CO2 levels from broken rhythm breathing. These things don't disappear when the person does. They linger. A trace. A weather print of emotion. In high-pressure labs, scientists have recorded sudden microdrops in atmospheric pressure during emotional outbursts. It's not dramatic. No barometer would swing wildly, but the shift is consistent. Emotional intensity correlates with subtle fluctuations in pressure, humidity, and even photon emission from skin. You shine differently when you cry. You reflect light differently when you laugh. But even if you take away the machines, people know. We feel it. We walk into rooms and know what just happened. The tension of a fight, the warmth of love, the hollow echo of grief. It's embedded in the room's pressure, in the way the door closes, in how the air wraps around your body. You know without being told. Some cultures have words for this. In Japanese, kuki wo yomu means to read the air, to sense mood and emotional undercurrents. In Sanskrit, prana is both breath and life energy, believed to saturate the space around emotional people. Western science is catching up to what many cultures have always felt. The atmosphere is not neutral, it's reactive. And then there's the question of feedback. If your emotions change the pressure in a room, and others feel it, do their bodies respond in kind? Do their emotions shift to match? Is this how empathy works? A cascade of atmospheric synchronization. Like weather aligning between people? This would explain why a single person's despair can flatten an entire gathering. Why a child's joy can lift a room. Why a sudden death leaves behind a silence that hums with weight for days. It's not imagination. It's physics bending to biology. Energy meeting atmosphere. There's a theory that consciousness isn't just internal. It's field-based. It radiates. It inhabits space. And space reacts. What if your thoughts, charged with emotion, are sculpting the room around you, shifting air, light, sound, and pressure in ways we've only begun to measure? You are not a sealed container. You are a node in a system. And when you cry, the room sighs. When you laugh, the room exhales. Emotion is not invisible. It's not even just biochemical. It's atmospheric. So, the next time the air feels heavy after someone speaks, don't ignore it. When the lights feel too bright after a burst of joy, don't dismiss it. Your body might just be detecting what your brain hasn't yet named, because you don't just live in air, you shape it, you pressure it, you carry weather in your soul, and the room remembers. Celestial bodies respond. You step outside. The sky is thick with cloud, soft and unbroken, but then, almost too perfectly, it parts. A narrow break forms above you, and through it, the stars appear. Just a few at first, then more, as if they were waiting, as if they knew you'd look up at that exact moment. The rest of the sky stays dark, but right above you, clear, shimmering, responsive. You want to believe it's coincidence, that the wind simply shifted, that clouds move as they do. But it keeps happening. Every time you look up, the sky seems to notice. The clouds slide aside, the stars emerge, like secrets unveiled only by your gaze. You begin to wonder, is something watching? Or worse, is something responding? Some call this psychological projection, pareidolia, on a cosmic scale. The human mind sees patterns in randomness, faces in clouds, meaning in coincidence. But if it's all in your head, why does it feel so synchronized? Why does it happen too precisely, too often, to be dismissed? Ancient cultures didn't see the sky as indifferent. They saw it as alive, responsive. Gods moved behind the stars. Omens rode the moon. In those stories, the sky was not just a backdrop, it was a mirror, a signal, a mechanism of communication. And maybe they were right. Maybe we've just forgotten how to look. Science tells us the cosmos is vast and indifferent, that light from stars takes thousands of years to reach us, that what we see is long dead. But in quantum physics, observation alters outcomes. The double-slit experiment shows light behaves differently when observed. Particles collapse into position when watched. It's not superstition. It's measurable. So, if particles can respond to your gaze, why not the sky? Consider this. Maybe the sky doesn't reveal what's there. It reveals what's needed. Maybe it renders stars only when you're ready to see them. In simulations, data isn't loaded all at once. Only what the player can see is rendered. The rest is placeholder, code, potential. What if the night sky functions the same way? That would mean the stars above you didn't exist until you looked, and when you did, they arrived. People across the world report similar moments. A cloud opens when they ask the universe for a sign. A star falls just as they whisper a question. A beam of moonlight breaks through at the exact second they feel most alone. These are not grand miracles. They are small, silent responses, like the cosmos nodding back. One woman stood on a rooftop grieving her brother. She whispered his name and asked for a sign. The clouds parted instantly, revealing Orion, his favorite constellation. She swore it hadn't been visible a second earlier. Another man, lost in thought, stared upward and saw two stars blink off and back on, right where his eyes had just landed. He felt it, not as coincidence, but as communication. Skeptics dismiss these stories as apophenia, the tendency to connect unrelated dots. But what if the connection is real? What if you aren't imposing meaning on the stars, but receiving it? In ancient Rome, augurs read the flight of birds and cloud patterns to interpret the god's will. In Hindu cosmology, the positions of stars at your birth determine the architecture of your soul. These weren't mere beliefs, they were systems of engagement. The sky was seen not as passive, but reactive, a participant in your story. And maybe it still is. Maybe you are being watched, not in a paranoid sense, but in a cosmic one. Maybe awareness flows both ways. You seek the stars, and they seek you back. Some scientists theorize about a participatory universe, that without consciousness the universe wouldn't exist in a usable form. It requires observers to define it. In this model, reality is not fixed, it's relational, it's feedback, and that includes the stars. Have you ever noticed how the night sky looks different when you're happy? Or when you're grieving? Some nights it feels vast and cold, other nights impossibly close. Maybe the sky isn't changing. Maybe you are. Or maybe the sky adjusts to match. That's the eerie part. Because if the sky is reactive, then what else is? You begin to see a pattern, not just in the stars, but in timing. You feel drawn to look up just before something changes, just before clarity arrives. The clouds move, not on schedule, but on cue, your cue, as if the world above is not waiting to be admired, but waiting to respond. And then it clicks. You're not a spectator. You're a participant, a catalyst. The stars are not far. They are near, whispering light into place when you ask. Clouds part not because the weather shifts, but because something up there wants to be seen. What if celestial bodies are not just physical masses, but lenses, windows between states of reality? What if every time you look at the moon, something looks back? Not with malice, not with eyes, but with presence. The night sky, then, is not just an atmosphere, it's a dialogue. Your attention is the key. So, next time you step outside, don't just look up. Ask, feel, wait. Watch for the shift, the clearing, the glimmer that wasn't there before. And when it appears, don't explain it away. Say thank you, because something above may have moved for you. The stars are not distant, they are listening. Clothes don't fit right. What if one morning your clothes felt like they belonged to someone else, and somehow you still wore them? Not in size, not in color, not even in fabric. In presence. In energy. You get dressed like any other day, but something is wrong. The sleeves feel slightly off. The pants don't sit on your hips the same way. You check the tags. They're yours. You remember buying them. But today, they feel foreign. As if the version of you who wore them isn't you anymore. You stand in the mirror, and for a moment, the reflection feels delayed, like your body is there, but the self inside is still catching up. You adjust the collar, but the unease doesn't leave. You try another outfit, still wrong, still not yours. Like you've stepped into a life too similar to leave, but slightly shifted in meaning, slightly haunted by recognition. This isn't about fashion or mood, it's about identity. Subtle, unnerving displacement, a kind of dissociation with fabric and self, and it happens to more people than you think. Psychologists might label it depersonalization, moments where you feel detached from your own body or surroundings. But this isn't the floaty, out-of-body kind. This is tactile, intimate. The second skin of fabric no longer feels integrated with the person wearing it. Like putting on a costume, only to discover the costume is more alive than you are. Some theorists say this could be a memory echo, that you're remembering how someone else felt wearing those clothes in another time, another reality. That your body is stable, but your mind has moved, slid sideways across dimensions, even if just a fraction. Enough for your senses to scream, not quite. Enough for your body to know it's misaligned. Others speak of timeline fractures, micro shifts in reality, glitches that go unnoticed except in the mundane. You wake up on Earth 0.001 instead of Earth 0.000. Everything looks the same, but something is watching, observing. Not you, but the echo of you. And your clothes are the first thing it sees. You feel it in the fabric, like you're performing you, acting out your life in someone else's role. You try to brush it off. Maybe you're tired, anxious, not grounded, but the feeling lingers. You go through your day in a body that looks like yours, wearing clothes you chose, and still, something inside whispers, these aren't yours anymore. Now stretch that concept further. What if these moments aren't random? What if they're checkpoints, markers that you've stepped across the edge of a simulation cell? In video games, when your character loads into a new environment, their model refreshes, textures snap into place. Could these moments of clothing dissonance be the same? Your avatar syncing to a new save file, a new observer? There are stories, countless, quiet, and rarely shared. People who swear their clothes felt inhabited, that they looked in the mirror and saw someone just different enough. Eyes with a gaze slightly more aware, posture a fraction stiffer, a look that said, I know you're watching. And worse, sometimes the feeling doesn't stop. You change outfits again, and again, but everything feels curated, selected, like you're being dressed by something else. Something studying how you respond, how long until you notice, how quickly you try to return to normal. You might call it paranoia, but if you felt it, you know it's not fear, it's awareness, hyper-awareness. The creeping sense that identity is negotiable, and the skin we wear is just one layer among many. Some believe these moments are tied to entities, not physical, but perceptual, beings that tune into consciousness not through thought, but through representation. They can't see your soul, but they can study your choices, your outfits, your behavior, like watching someone inhabit a role too loosely. That slight mismatch is what draws their attention. There are reports of recurring feelings tied to specific garments, a shirt that always induces dread, a jacket that feels comforting but not personal, shoes that feel like they've walked paths you've never known, clothing with history, memory embedded in thread, not supernatural, just deeply coded into your sensory field. Clothing is intimate. It touches more of our body than most people ever will. It records heat, scent, rhythm. It molds to our posture, learns our shape. So what happens when the body inside that fabric changes, but the clothing doesn't? What if your consciousness jumped, but your wardrobe didn't follow? You feel the disconnect. Not because you've changed style, but because the you that loved that style isn't entirely here anymore. This is more than a wardrobe malfunction. It's an existential glitch, a breach in continuity where your sense of self is measured not by thoughts, but by threads. The fabric remembers, and when your soul shifts, even slightly, it notices. You can fake a smile, hold your posture, mimic yesterday's routine, but the clothes know. They fit the body, but not the being. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Maybe this discomfort is a signal, a marker that you've crossed some invisible boundary between who you were and who you've become, between the role and the actor, between reality and the illusion that wears it. So be cautious when everything still fits, but nothing feels right. You might not be dressing for the day. You might be dressing for someone else's memory of you. Locks react to your thoughts. What if the lock on your front door knows how you feel? It sounds absurd until you live it. You're rushing, stressed, running late, and the key won't turn. It jams, it sticks, it refuses. You wiggle, breathe harder, curse under your breath. Still nothing. Then later, when you're calm, collected, at peace, the same key slides in effortlessly, like the lock was never broken, like it was waiting for you to quiet down. This isn't coincidence. It happens too often, and to too many people. Welcome to the idea that your environment may be more aware of your emotional state than you think, especially the simplest of mechanisms, locks. They're not smart. They're not connected to the internet, but they seem to sense something, as if metal itself waits for a cue, a vibration, a state of mind before it decides to cooperate. Let's begin with what we know. When you're anxious or frustrated, your grip changes, your coordination suffers, your breathing quickens, you shake the key slightly. Your hands sweat. From a mechanical perspective, these variables could affect how easily a key turns. That's the rational view. Simple cause and effect. But it doesn't explain the patterns. People describe locks acting differently at different emotional states, consistently. One woman claims her office door would only open after she mentally calmed herself, even though the key was perfect. A man swore his childhood bedroom lock would jam every time he had a fight with his father, no matter who was holding the key. Another person noticed their front door deadbolt never clicked into place when they were deeply sad. Only when they felt neutral or happy would it fully engage. This starts to feel less mechanical and more interactive. Could it be muscle tension? Maybe. But locks don't usually respond to micro torques that sensitively. Could it be our perception? Perhaps. But these accounts are not isolated. They're strangely universal. So what if the lock is responding to something? Some physicists explore the fringe idea that intention, a focused mental state, can influence the behavior of physical systems. It's the same space where mind-matter interaction studies live. Random number generators being affected by meditation, water crystals forming different shapes depending on emotion, small, statistically weird anomalies that suggest consciousness might leave fingerprints. Locks are perfect for this. They're binary. Open or closed. Turn or don't. Any slight irregularity is immediately noticed, and maybe, just maybe, their simplicity makes them sensitive, not to your thoughts directly, but to what your thoughts do to the space around them. Your electromagnetic field shifts when you're nervous. Your heartbeat radiates differently. Your body becomes a small storm. And metal, structured, rigid, exact, might resist chaos. There are experiments showing metal is more susceptible to vibration and temperature fluctuations than previously believed. Your mood shifts your body temp. Your sweat changes electrical conductivity. Maybe your body subtly changes the environment around the key. But again, that doesn't explain the consistency of reports involving multiple people and multiple locks behaving strangely based on mood alone. Now, take it further. Some traditions believe that the universe responds to your internal alignment, that doors open not just physically, but symbolically when you are ready. Could it be that what we call mechanical failure is actually emotional misalignment? That a jammed lock is a message, a pause, a gentle nudge from something deeper saying, "Not yet, not like this." There are stories in ancient texts about living metal, not sentient but responsive, forged during eclipses, tempered under stars, tools that only work for those with the right mind, keys that refuse imposters, gates that will not open if your heart holds anger. Fiction, perhaps. But then, why does it feel so real when it happens? Why do you instinctively know the lock won't turn until you calm down? Some say this is the script of reality responding to its actor, that the door is not an object, it's a cue. And when you break character, rage, fear, chaos, the lock pauses. It waits. Not because it hates you, but because it's in sync with something larger, something subtle, a script you're part of, whether you remember writing it or not. And when you're aligned, truly aligned, the path clears, the key slides, the door opens, because it recognizes you. Because the lock is not a test of strength, but of state. It's not just physical doors either. Some people report their cars refusing to start when they're in emotional distress, only to work fine once they have calmed down. Others talk about safes, drawers, even digital locks acting erratically depending on their mood. It suggests that what we call malfunction may sometimes be resonance or resistance. The boundary between us and the objects we touch may be thinner than we've assumed, and the deeper you look, the more uncanny it becomes. A woman in Poland documented a diary of her interactions with a 200-year-old wooden chest in her grandmother's house. The lock was rusted, useless, or so they thought. But every time she visited with peace in her heart, it opened. Every time she came in grief, it stuck shut. She never forced it. She said it helped her listen. To herself. The chest became not just an heirloom, but a barometer of her emotional truth. We tend to think of metal as lifeless, but perhaps that's projection. We assume the world is passive unless it shouts, but maybe locks whisper. Maybe they don't obey force, but resonance. And maybe, just maybe, your emotions are the real key. So the next time a door resists, don't fight it. Reflect. What am I carrying into this threshold? What energy does the key recognize in me right now? And when it turns, when the lock clicks open like a puzzle solved by presence, not pressure, pause and smile. The world might be telling you something. You're ready now. Randomness bends in batches. You don't notice randomness until it starts to clump. A phone call from an old friend, then 2 more messages from people you hadn't heard from in years. You think of a song, and suddenly it's on the radio, twice, then again in a store. You break a glass, stub your toe, and miss a bus, all in the span of 10 minutes. Coincidences don't arrive one at a time. They gather. They surge. It's as if reality doesn't distribute chance evenly, but in emotional storms, and when it rains, it pours. This strange pattern has been noticed for centuries, but brushed aside as human bias, our instinct to find meaning where there is none. But what if there is a design? What if randomness bends in batches not because we want it to, but because it must? It's called clumping or temporal clustering. Statistically, truly random events often appear grouped because our brains evolved to detect patterns. But even mathematicians have admitted that sometimes the clustering exceeds what randomness should allow. We expect some streaks, yes, but what if those streaks are trying to say something? What if they're not random at all, but timed pressure points in the simulation of life? Think about it. Life rarely breaks evenly. It doesn't distribute challenges across time like an even shuffle. Instead, suffering piles up. Death comes in threes. Bad news arrives in a cascade. You go months without hearing anything, and then suddenly 5 life-changing events knock on your door in the same week. Why? Why do systems that claim to be random deliver their messages in clusters that feel emotional, even sentient? Some believe we're being stress tested, that the world, or something behind it, periodically overloads the system, not to destroy you, but to gather data. How do you react when overwhelmed? What choices do you make when everything hits at once? The idea isn't paranoid, it's psychological. Behavioral scientists simulate this all the time, stressors given in waves, not drops, because that's when people reveal who they are. And maybe reality does the same. Maybe when you are bombarded by coincidences, seeing the same numbers, running into the same faces, hearing the same phrases, it's not just anomaly, it's measurement, calibration, as if the universe is pinging your awareness, checking for response. One woman described waking up to see 3 different articles featuring the same obscure quote she had just dreamt about. Another man saw the same stranger 3 times in one day, across different cities, without explanation. Others report hearing the same sentence from multiple people, in different places, as if a script had been uploaded into reality. It's never just once. It's a pattern. It's a pulse. Quantum theorists have posited that randomness may not be as smooth as we think. That, at the smallest levels, events occur in probabilistic bunches, bursts of outcomes collapsing all at once. If our world is built on such particles, then clusters of coincidence might not be glitches. They might be reflections of the base code of reality. Even weather follows this logic. Rain doesn't fall one drop at a time. It releases in waves. The stock market too, nothing for days, then a flurry of motion. Everything natural moves in clusters, so why wouldn't experience do the same? But there's something more disturbing here. What if these batches of randomness are not just natural, but narrative, like plot points arranged by an unseen hand? Moments designed to create stress, decision, momentum. Coincidences as tools for character development, and you, the character, must respond. There's a theory among simulation believers that our world is periodically rewritten, and during the transition there are echoes, redundancies, coincidences, things lining up because the render engine is resetting the probabilities. These moments of alignment feel eerie, intense, disorienting, because they're not meant to be seen. You're catching the stitches in the code. Some psychologists say that humans manifest what they focus on, that if you begin to notice something, your brain filters reality to show you more of it. But again, that doesn't explain when coincidences find you, before you ever thought to look, before you were even aware there was a pattern forming. It's not selection bias, it's something else, something alive in the architecture. A man in Tokyo wrote about thinking of his sister's laugh while walking home and hearing it, seconds later, from a woman on the street who looked nothing like her. That night, he dreamed of her. The next day, she called after 5 years of silence. That's not subconscious framing. That's synchronicity. And it didn't happen in parts. It happened all at once. When randomness moves, it moves like a wave. Not because it's broken, but because it's watching. Because it's orchestrated. So the next time everything happens at once, don't assume the universe is punishing you. Maybe it's testing you. Maybe it's tuning you. Or maybe it's trying to get your attention. Because whatever runs this world doesn't whisper softly. It crashes in, 3, 4, 5 times in a row, until you finally look up and say, "What are you trying to tell me?" And maybe the answer is already inside the pattern. Not in the events themselves, but in how they make you feel, what you choose, what you change. Because when randomness bends in batches, it's not chance. It's design disguised as chaos. Directions pull the same way. You're driving with no destination in mind. No GPS, no map, no plan. Just a desire to move. But somehow, you keep ending up on the same street. Maybe it's a childhood shortcut. Maybe it's somewhere with no special significance at all. But you notice the pattern. Even when you change your starting point. Even when you try to go in a different direction, the route bends. The road tilts. And before long, there you are again. Back on the same street. At first, you tell yourself it's coincidence, familiarity, muscle memory. But what if it's more than that? What if it's not just habit or autopilot, but something deeper, something pulling you? A magnetic suggestion, not a physical magnet, but a cognitive one, something in your mind or the world guiding you back over and over, as if that location, that street, holds something you haven't yet unlocked. This isn't just a personal oddity. Many people report this phenomenon. They get lost and end up in the same place. They try to avoid an area and somehow still arrive there. It's like invisible roots are etched into their perception of space, dragging them through familiar loops. The human brain is constantly scanning for patterns, shortcuts, anchors. Even without conscious thought, it builds emotional maps of the world. Places where something happened, where someone left, where you once felt safe or scared. And those places hold weight, psychological gravity. And like gravity, it pulls you in subtle arcs until you return. But what if it's not just internal? There's a phenomenon known as geomagnetic imprinting, used in animal navigation. Birds, turtles, even dogs are known to orient themselves using Earth's magnetic field. Some experiments suggest humans may unconsciously detect these fields too. One study recorded brainwave shifts when subjects were exposed to rotating magnetic fields, even in total darkness. We might not feel it, but we may still follow it. So, if your mind and the world both hold magnetic paths, what happens when they align? A resonance, a pull, a loop. Not because of habit, but because of tuning. Because your nervous system is resonating with something out there, guiding you like a compass without a needle. Some streets might act as energetic attractors, not just landmarks, but emotional coordinates, anchored by memory, trauma, longing. They carry more weight than we see, and when your emotional state lines up with that resonance, your brain subtly nudges the wheel. You miss a turn. Take the long way. End up where your conscious mind never aimed, but your inner compass did. There are stories of people driving for hours trying to escape their thoughts, only to end up outside an ex-lover's house. Others who swear they avoided a street all year, only to take a random left and find themselves back at the corner where they once cried. Coincidence? Or emotional magnetism? This theory even has a neurological basis. The hippocampus, which governs memory and navigation, doesn't separate them. Your mental map is laced with memory. The streets of your mind are built from moments. So when your mind goes searching, not for location, but for answers, it often sends your body to follow. That's why a street can call you. That's why a direction can feel inevitable. In simulation theory circles, there's talk of pathing bias, where an artificial system subtly favors certain routes, to conserve data, to loop patterns, to optimize emotional engagement. Whether we live in a simulation or not, the result feels the same. The street calls, the route repeats, and you are never as free-roaming as you thought. Maybe it's not just about returning to a place, but returning to a moment, a version of you that still lingers there. Maybe the road isn't drawing you, it's remembering you. And when you pass through, it recognizes you. It aligns with your frequency, and like any good magnet, it draws you back into orbit. One woman shared that after her father's death, she kept finding herself turning onto the same suburban street she hadn't visited since childhood. It was nowhere near her usual route. She wasn't thinking about him, but the road led directly to his favorite bakery, now closed. Another man reported that during a difficult divorce, he found himself repeatedly walking past the same park bench where he had proposed years before. He lived in a different part of the city. His routes never made sense, but his steps always curved back. There may be an explanation even stranger than memory. Some physicists believe space-time isn't flat. It's warped by emotion and memory. That in a quantum reality, intention alters probability. If so, then the more emotionally charged a location becomes, the more likely it is to pull you back toward it, not by force, but by increased probability paths. In a multiverse of choices, the same path keeps winning. Even more haunting is the idea that these returns are not random, but orchestrated, that you are being guided to reconcile something, to retrieve a version of yourself you left behind. The street is not haunted, but you are, by memory, by longing, by a future you don't yet understand. And the world answers that haunting with echoes, in street signs, in familiar curbs, in silent invitations through space. There's a growing body of study around ambient cognitive guidance, the idea that subtle cues in light, sound, magnetic shifts, and subconscious pattern recognition may nudge human navigation, that we're not lost when we think we are. We're just listening to a deeper compass, one tuned not to maps, but meaning. So maybe the GPS you ignore isn't just inside your phone. Maybe it's buried inside you, built from longing, memory, and instinct. And maybe when your thoughts become directionless, that's exactly when your soul takes the wheel and guides you home, again and again. Because some roads don't just take you somewhere, they take you back to yourself. Flames flicker toward you. You light a candle and sit still. There's no breeze, no motion, but the flame flickers, not randomly, not playfully, but toward you. You shift to the left, and the flame leans left. You shift right, and it follows. It doesn't tremble at the wind or respond to the room. It responds to you. Not like heat-seeking heat, but like recognition. Like fire knows it's being watched. At first, you ignore it. The brain writes it off as chance, but you start to notice. Every time you light a flame, it behaves this way. You try experiments. You move quietly around the room. Still, the flame pulls toward your gaze. It doesn't dance. It bows. It leans. Not away in fear, but toward, as if drawn by something in you. In ancient times, fire was more than warmth. It was the tongue of the divine. Prometheus stole it from the gods. Zoroastrians prayed to it. Shamans spoke through it. Fire wasn't just energy. It was attention, spirit, intention manifest. And maybe we've forgotten what that meant, because when you stare at fire long enough, it begins to stare back. Science might explain it with heat currents, micro movements, subtle shifts in air pressure from your breath or body, but if the flame always bends toward you, not away, that's not diffusion. That's direction. That's alignment. And alignment is never accidental. The observer effect tells us that observing a system changes it, not in theory, in practice. Quantum particles collapse from wave to point under watch. Consciousness, then, is not passive. It's participatory. When you observe the flame, perhaps it collapses too, not into particle, but posture, leaning, reacting, acknowledging. Some mystics believe that fire is a living entity, ancient and aware, that every flame is a shard of the same primal force. It burns not only matter, but meaning. It consumes not only air, but attention. So when you light a candle, you're not just igniting wax, you're opening a line, a connection, an exchange. And that flicker, it's a response. Watch longer. Not with your eyes, but with presence. The flame seems to know where you are even before you move. It anticipates, waits, leans as if listening. You can test it. Light 2 candles. Sit in front of one. The other remains still. This one? It shifts, stirs, flares ever so slightly. You shift your gaze to the second, and it picks up the cue. The first dies down. The second reacts. Like children vying for your attention. What does it mean for the flame to be aware? Maybe it's not awareness as we understand it. Maybe it's resonance. Your body generates a biofield, electric, magnetic, subtle. Maybe fire responds not to you, but to the frequency of your being, not to breathe, but belief. It flickers to your energy signature. It listens to the hum beneath your heartbeat. Some ancient rites warned never to lie in front of fire, that it hears, that it remembers, that it shows truth. A candle in a dark room was used not just for light, but for revelation. When the flame bends, it's not revealing the air, it's revealing you. It's showing where attention lives. And attention, in this world, might be the most powerful force of all. Think about it. Where your attention goes, reality follows. Focus is gravity. Intention is momentum. And maybe fire, the oldest element of transformation, is drawn to the raw pull of that attention. It doesn't just flicker, it signals. You are here. I see you. You move, and the flame acknowledges it. Not in fear, not in chaos, but in respect. A sacred nod, a private bow. Like the universe saying, noted. Children often notice it first. They point to how fire likes them. Animals, too, will sometimes stare at candles or move in strange ways around firelight. They sense what adults dismiss, that something in the flame shifts when you look with your whole self. And what happens when you blow it out? The smoke rises in spirals, sometimes toward you. Not upward, not sideways, but in a straight path that curves subtly, uncannily, into your breath. Like the flame isn't gone, just dispersed, watching still. Some believe that fire tests the observer, that it leans toward the one carrying questions, the one in transition, that its flicker is not random, but diagnostic. Are you aligned? Are you grounded? Are you awake? It moves to reveal imbalance or agreement. You are not simply lighting a candle, you are asking for reflection. So, the next time you see a flame lean your way, don't brush it off. Stay still. Ask silently. Let it respond. It may tell you more than any mirror, because fire does not lie. It flickers where the truth lives. And right now, it's pointing to you. And maybe that's why we're drawn to fire, not just for warmth or beauty, but for its silent awareness. It doesn't judge, it doesn't speak, but it sees. And it reacts. Light a candle when you feel lost. Observe how it moves. Light one when you feel joy and watch its rhythm. It may not speak, but it remembers your presence. It reflects it in the dance, in the lean, in the brief subtle motion that says, you exist and something noticed. Fire has always marked ritual, transformation, decision points. Maybe that's because fire doesn't just burn, it listens. And every flicker toward you is a question. Are you ready to see yourself? Because the flame already has. You appear in backgrounds. What if you started appearing in places you've never been? It starts as a coincidence, a stranger's vacation photo posted online. You're tagged, not in the foreground, but the background. A blurry figure, face half lit, clothes familiar. The resemblance is unsettling. You laugh it off. A doppelganger, maybe, a trick of the light. But then it happens again, and again. Different locations, different people, but always the same detail. You're there, just out of focus. Looking in the wrong direction, or worse, directly at the lens. You never took those trips. You weren't at that event. Yet there you are, behind the bride in a wedding photo you have no memory of. Reflected in a store window from a city you've never visited. On a subway platform across the world. Caught mid-step, blurry, but unmistakable. It's not just that someone looks like you. It's that it is you. This isn't just a thought experiment. People have reported experiences like this for years. Stories buried in forums, whispered in late-night conversations. Some laugh. Others delete the photos. But a few start to worry. Because the pattern doesn't stop. The figure, your figure, keeps showing up. Sometimes in old photos. Sometimes in live footage. Sometimes in frames that change after you've already seen them once. Psychologists might call it pareidolia, the tendency to see patterns, faces, resemblances where none exist. But pareidolia doesn't explain changing frames. It doesn't explain metadata timestamps that predate your birth. It doesn't explain the growing sensation that you're being followed, not by someone else, but by your own shadow, detached and wandering. The watchers, if that's what they are, seem to want you to know, these aren't subtle placements. They're deliberate. In corners, near mirrors, behind glass. Always where you'll be hard to see, but impossible to forget once noticed. Some images feel staged, like the entire composition was built around that moment of recognition. As if someone, or something, is documenting you from a vantage point beyond time, and then you start to feel it. Not fear, exactly. Not paranoia. Something colder. The sense that you're being mapped, not surveilled like a target, but recorded like a variable. Your routines, your gestures, the weight of your presence in unnoticed spaces, your shadow. Not the one behind you, but the one ahead. Projected into rooms you've never entered. Some say these figures are future echoes, versions of you that slipped through time, caught briefly in photographs because light itself remembered. Others believe they're implants, observers inserted into public archives as evidence, proof of presence, a breadcrumb trail you were never meant to see, until now. There's a case document in a now archived subreddit. A woman from Canada claimed she found herself in over 20 different tourist photos around the world. In one, she's outside the Louvre. In another, a beach in Thailand. She has never owned a passport. The photos span years. She doesn't age, always in the background. Always in motion. She stopped using the internet after the last one, where she was seen holding her phone, scrolling through her own profile. Another man found his reflection in someone's bathroom mirror, posted in a real estate listing halfway across the country. The image changed overnight. His reflection wasn't there when he first viewed the page. Only after he downloaded it did he see himself. Standing in the hallway, watching. The deeper you look, the more you find. Not just images, videos, security feeds, public footage, your shape, your posture, your movements, repeating like a watermark. You begin to wonder, is this surveillance? Is this a glitch? Or is this a message? One theory is simulation bleed. In multi-layered simulations, artifacts of one layer can leak into another. You weren't there physically, but the render of you, the pattern of you, was a placeholder, an echo, a note from the system. This identity has weight. This identity has reach. Another possibility is quantum mirroring, the idea that particles entangled across timelines might briefly synchronize, producing duplicate appearances of matter, your body, duplicated briefly, not cloned, but mirrored, across a timeline adjacent to your own, captured by a camera because it's mechanical, unbiased. It recorded what it saw. You just weren't supposed to see it too. And maybe this isn't the first time. Maybe the photos are just reminders. Maybe the watchers are showing you what you've already forgotten, that you are not a singular being in a singular life, that you are layered, rendered, traced across timelines like graphite over paper, and the images, the ones that haunt you, are bleed marks, artifacts of a larger process. So what do you do when your face appears in places it shouldn't? Do you hide? Do you search for more? Or do you accept that you were never completely here to begin with? Because if the watchers are showing you your own shadow, it means they've been watching far longer than you knew. And maybe the photos aren't evidence of you, but of them. You wake mid-sentence. What if you wake one morning abruptly, and the first thing out of your mouth is the end of a sentence? Not gibberish, not a mumble. Words, clear, precise, as if you interrupted yourself, as if you were mid-conversation and just now rejoined reality. Your heart races. The room is quiet, but you feel like you were somewhere, speaking to someone, and now you're back. But the conversation still echoes, a phrase half completed, an answer without a question, a thought not yours, but deeply familiar. This is not a rare event. People across cultures describe waking suddenly, mid-sentence, with the unshakable feeling that they were somewhere else, communicating, not dreaming, not wandering through a surreal landscape, but speaking. Like consciousness didn't pause during sleep. It simply transferred rooms. And now, you're back, with the tail end of that dialogue still clinging to your tongue. Science tells us that the brain doesn't shut off during sleep. In REM, neural activity can mimic wakefulness. We process emotions, solve problems, rehearse survival. But speech, structured thought, that's different. Waking mid-sentence suggests continuity, a thread that didn't break with unconsciousness, which raises a strange, electrifying question. Where were you? Who were you talking to? And why does it feel like the sentence wasn't yours to begin with? Some researchers propose this phenomenon is a form of hypnopompic hallucination, when the boundary between dreaming and waking becomes porous. But hypnopompia usually brings confusion, fragments, not clarity, not structure, not sentences that feel intentional, directed, like a phone call cut short by the alarm clock. What makes it more unnerving is that these sentences often carry emotional weight. People report waking mid-apology, mid-laughter, mid-declaration. But I already forgave you. Tell her I remember. You're not alone this time. Words that sound final, urgent. Not like internal dialogue, but messages meant to be received. Could it be your subconscious? Maybe. The inner mind trying to reconcile something too heavy for daylight. But if so, why the specificity? Why do so many report waking up saying names they don't know, languages they don't speak, or responding to voices they've never heard before? One man in Brazil woke speaking fluent Russian. He'd never studied it. Another woman woke saying, "You're right, I'll go now," and burst into tears without knowing why. These are not isolated flukes. They form a pattern, a script, perhaps, running beneath reality, one that we occasionally intercept as we drift between states. Consciousness isn't binary. It flows. And during sleep, it might open to frequencies we forget when the sun rises. Some theorists call this conversational bleed, the idea that in altered states, the mind taps into a shared cognitive field, a space where thoughts cross, where conversations happen in parallel. You, in sleep, become a participant, an attendee, a speaker, and sometimes, when you wake, you bring the residue back. This echoes ancient beliefs. Indigenous traditions often describe the dream state not as fantasy, but as journey. Shamans spoke with ancestors, carried messages, entered meetings of spirit councils. In these stories, returning mid-sentence was not strange. It was expected. You left the meeting early, but your soul stayed longer. Your mouth simply caught up. There are modern parallels, too. Remote viewing, on a psychic downloads. People in altered states channeling information beyond their education. If waking mid-sentence is part of this phenomenon, then maybe you didn't dream the conversation. Maybe you were present for it. Maybe waking up was the interruption. And then comes the haunting twist. What if the sentence wasn't meant for you at all? What if you're just the receiver? a relay, a vessel. Something in your state of sleep made you the open channel. A consciousness trying to speak found your frequency and used it. You wake, speaking its last line. It would explain the dissonance, the foreign words, the sense of not belonging to the thought, yet needing to finish it. And maybe, just maybe, it's a two-way system. Maybe someone else, somewhere, woke up finishing your sentence too. Quantum theories of consciousness suggest entanglement of minds. That thought may not be bound by skulls, but shared across distance, time, and identity. You think a thought, and someone else receives the echo. Dreams may be where these crossovers intensify. In sleep, we lose ego barriers, open the ports, broadcast and receive. So, what does it mean if you wake mid-sentence? It means the mind may travel deeper than we know. That speech might not begin in the mouth, but in the shared space where minds meet. That the you in bed and the you speaking aren't always the same. One man recorded himself nightly. For weeks, nothing. Then one night at 3:14 a.m., he jolted upright and said, "Don't forget to check the basement. It's in the walls." He had no memory of it. But the next day, a pipe burst behind the drywall. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe that sentence wasn't prediction. It was reception. A message passed along, a voice reaching through. So next time you wake mid-sentence, don't dismiss it. Write it down, sit with it. Ask yourself, whose thought did I just complete? What conversation did I just leave? And most of all, what part of me is still speaking, even when I think I'm asleep? Your pulse echoes back. It happens when the world goes silent. No traffic, no conversation, no movement, just stillness. And in that stillness, you sense something you can't explain. A pulse. But not in your chest, not in your veins. It comes from behind you. Faint. Perfectly synced with your heartbeat. You stop breathing just to check. And there it is again. A second pulse. Copying you. Echoing your rhythm, like something invisible is learning how to be you. At first, it feels like paranoia. Maybe it's your own pulse reverberating through the room, bouncing off the walls. But this isn't a vibration. It's a presence, a mimic. People across the world have described the exact sensation, especially in moments of stillness, solitude, or meditation. You sit in silence and become aware not of emptiness, but of something mirroring you from just out of view. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move. It listens. And it beats. Doctors call it interoceptive hallucination, your nervous system mistaking internal rhythms for external sensations. But that label doesn't fit everyone. Some swear it happens outside their body, behind their shoulder, under their bed, in the ceiling above them, always in rhythm, never ahead, never late. A perfect mirror pulse, but only when you're absolutely still. There are theories, some psychological, some metaphysical. One idea suggests your consciousness is not fully inside your body, that what you think of as you is partially distributed, echoed across a small radius. When you slow down enough, you sense the echo, and it feels like something else, because in a way, it is. Other theories are more surreal. Some believe the second pulse is your observer, your shadow consciousness, not metaphorical, literal, a construct built into reality to witness and reflect. Not your soul, but your algorithmic twin. A hidden process that mirrors your physical input as part of a greater equation. It doesn't interfere, it simply matches. Records. Weights. In sleep studies, participants who meditated deeply before bed sometimes reported feeling a presence right before unconsciousness took over. Some described hearing two heartbeats, one fast, one slow, only for the slower one to catch up and sync perfectly with theirs, just as they drifted off. These weren't dreams. These were moments right before the brain surrendered control, a threshold, and something waiting on the other side. This concept appears in old folklore. In Nordic traditions, the Vardøger was a spirit double, a presence that preceded your actions. In some tales, it followed instead, copying footsteps, breathing, even heartbeats. In Eastern traditions, there are stories of meditation leading to encounters with mirror selves, silent twins that reflect energy, thought, and rhythm. They weren't feared. They were respected. A sign that your soul had become visible to something else. What if the pulse is not a glitch of your body, but proof you're being scanned? Not by a machine, but by reality itself. Your heartbeat might be your signature, and some framework behind the simulation, is capturing that rhythm, matching it, aligning. Every time you're quiet, it listens again, not to steal, but to verify, to confirm you are still you. People often report this sensation in emotionally charged environments: empty rooms after an argument, forest clearings after crying, silent churches. Not because of superstition, but because emotion creates echo. The stronger the feeling, the louder your presence becomes, and the easier it is to reflect. Even physics hints at this. There's a phenomenon called sympathetic resonance, when one object vibrating at a certain frequency causes another to vibrate at the same. Tuning forks, guitar strings. But what if the body can do the same with space? What if strong enough stillness can make the very fabric around you echo? There's a man who reported feeling the pulse in his hotel room after 4 nights of solitude. He thought it was the HVAC system, but when he turned everything off, it continued. He sat still. The pulse sat with him. It never led. It only followed. Perfectly. Until he stood up. And it stopped. That's the common thread. The echo vanishes the moment you move, like it only exists in moments of complete surrender. Stillness. Silence. Which raises the question, who or what is doing the echoing? Some believe it's your future self, casting a rhythm backward through time, syncing to ensure continuity. Others believe it's a fragment of a deeper consciousness, a cosmic mirror briefly reflecting your identity back at you to make sure you haven't slipped. A checkpoint, a verification code made of flesh. So many of us move too fast to notice, but once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. You become aware of the duplicate rhythm behind you, not threatening, not warm, just there, not asking questions, just existing, matching. It's in the quiet. It's in the gaps. And when you're still enough to listen, you realize you've never truly been alone, because something is always watching from just one step behind, beating, waiting, echoing back your pulse, not to haunt you, but to know you're still here. So the next time everything is quiet and your own heartbeat seems too loud, listen carefully. Wait. There it is, just behind you. The second rhythm, the watcher, the reflection. And for one breathless moment, time will hold itself open, and you will know something is listening to the shape of who you are. You smell what's not there. You're alone in your house when it hits you. Burnt wire, acrid, sharp, unmistakable. You search everywhere. No smoke, no fire, no electronics overheating. The scent vanishes just as suddenly as it arrived. Later, you get a call. Someone you love is in trouble. Or you step outside and smell perfume, faint, floral, familiar. No one's around. But the scent brings back a memory, and for a moment, you feel watched. Rain on a dry day. Smoke when nothing burns. These aren't just tricks of the mind. They are warnings disguised as scents. This phenomenon has a name, phantom olfaction, or, more commonly, phantasmia. The experience of smelling something that isn't physically present. Medical textbooks often attribute it to migraines, sinus infections, neurological misfires. But for many, these smells arrive with emotional weight, perfect timing, and unshakable clarity. And they don't feel like glitches. They feel like signals. Our sense of smell is deeply tied to memory and survival. The olfactory bulb is directly linked to the limbic system, the brain's emotional and memory center. That's why a smell can instantly trigger a flood of feelings or forgotten scenes. But what if this connection goes both ways? What if intense thought, fear, or intuition can generate sensory feedback, like a smell arriving as a warning or confirmation? There are countless reports of people smelling roses the moment a loved one dies, miles away. Of people smelling smoke before getting bad news. Of people sensing ozone, like an electric storm, right before they find out a secret. The smells aren't imagined. They're remembered into the present, called forward by a part of the brain that speaks through scent when words fail. Some scientists believe that the brain can recreate a smell from memory so vividly it becomes real, at least to you. But what triggers it? Emotion? Memory? Something external? If thought can summon physical sensation, why not scent? And if scent is tied to survival, maybe this is a subconscious alarm, a sensory metaphor made chemical, like the scent of burnt wire, something short-circuiting, a warning you can't ignore. But there's more. Studies have shown that stress alters the chemicals in your nose. Anxiety can literally prime your olfactory receptors to become hypersensitive. This means that under intense emotional strain, you might not be creating smells, but detecting things others can't, like the faint residue of perfume left in fibers, or trace smoke molecules drifting from a faraway fire. You're not hallucinating. You're hyper-aware. And yet, some cases defy all logic. A man smells his grandmother's cookies baking, 10 years after she passed, in a house she never visited. A child smells seawater moments before hearing their father drowned. A woman smells her dead husband's cologne every time she cries. These are not memories. These are intrusions. Interruptions in normal perception, and they happen with uncanny timing. Some believe scent is the last sense to fade after death, and perhaps the first to arrive from beyond. In paranormal research, sudden unexplained smells are considered evidence of presence. Not all ghosts are seen. Some are smelled. A presence carried in molecules that shouldn't exist. And then there's the theory of parallel perception. That reality is layered, and every now and then, your brain catches a scent from another timeline, one where something is burning, someone just left, or something important just happened. The smell crosses over, like a ripple in the veil, letting you know something shifted. In quantum consciousness models, awareness is not localized. If your mind spans dimensions, what it detects isn't limited to your immediate surroundings. A smell, then, could be the result of consciousness tuning into another layer of space-time, where something meaningful is occurring. The scent isn't just a symbol. It's a literal data point from a nearby version of reality. There's a story of a woman who, every time she felt unsafe, would smell gasoline. It happened during arguments, late-night walks, even during a job interview with a man she didn't trust. There was never a leak, never a source. But every time she ignored the scent, something went wrong. Eventually, she began to treat the smell like a siren, a coded message her body had learned to send. In another case, a man who had never been to the sea began smelling salt water during moments of existential dread. Therapy later revealed his birth mother had lived by the ocean, and he'd been taken from her as an infant. The brain, in its wisdom, may store more than we consciously know, and perhaps scent is the way it leaks back out. Even science now explores smell as a tool for memory enhancement and emotional regulation. Scent-based therapies can anchor feelings, stimulate recall, or calm the nervous system. If a vial of lavender can reduce anxiety, why wouldn't your own brain try to do the same, conjuring scent in a moment of need, even if the source isn't physical? But these phantom scents are not always comforting. Some carry dread, the smell of burning before disaster, the stench of rot before betrayal, the coppery tang of blood before heartbreak. In these moments, the brain isn't soothing, it's warning. Your body knows the pattern, and it's trying to speak in the language of survival. Scent. Smell bypasses language. It doesn't ask for interpretation. It demands attention. That's why it cuts so deep, why it lingers, why a scent from nowhere can stop you in your tracks and make your skin crawl. It's older than thought, more primal than reason. So, if you smell something you can't explain, don't dismiss it. Smell is data, a signal, a bridge between what's happening and what hasn't surfaced yet, between this world and the next, between the past you buried and the future approaching. Pay attention, because sometimes the truth arrives through your nose, long before it reaches your mind. You're always in frame. You walk through a room and something catches your eye, not movement, but stillness, your reflection. In a dark window, a blank television screen, the glint of a spoon. You weren't trying to look, but there you are. Again. It's not vanity. It's not coincidence. It's something stranger. You're always in frame. You start to notice it more. The way your outline lingers in unexpected places. Your face reflected on the back of a phone. Your silhouette caught in a glass panel, even when you weren't facing it. It happens too often to dismiss. You begin to feel like the world is filled with quiet lenses, recording, reflecting, remembering you. Some say this is psychological, that humans are naturally drawn to faces, that we notice ourselves more than the environment does. But this isn't about vanity. It's about surveillance, not by cameras, but by reality itself. You start to feel that you're being framed, not by accusation, but by presence, observed not once, but constantly, persistently, as if existence keeps an eye on its subjects. There's an old superstition. Break a mirror, and you invite 7 years of bad luck. Why? Because the mirror doesn't just show your face, it holds a piece of you. It's not reflecting. It's watching, capturing, echoing. And when it breaks, something in your timeline fractures with it. Now, imagine all the surfaces around you that reflect. Your screen when it's off, the camera lens of a laptop in sleep mode, the darkened face of a microwave. You're there, blurred, faint, ghost-like. You never disappear. You just fade into shadow. But you're still visible. Always. Some researchers say that humans subconsciously scan environments for their own reflection. It's a survival mechanism, assessing our state, our posture, our emotion. But what if it's not your mind searching for your image? What if it's the environment pushing it back at you? Some spiritual traditions say mirrors are portals, that the self you see isn't really you, it's a twin, a version rendered for the observer's benefit. If that's true, then what happens when you catch your reflection where it shouldn't be? In the gleam of a surface you didn't expect, in a camera lens you didn't activate, in a pane of glass that shouldn't have that angle. That moment doesn't feel normal, it feels staged, like someone or something wanted you to see yourself, to remind you you're still being watched, or worse, you're still being recorded. We live in an age of lenses, phones, webcams, traffic cameras, doorbells, drones. Most of them we accept, but some you don't notice until after. That strange light in a dark screen, that shadow across the hallway mirror, that time you looked at a turned-off TV and saw yourself blinking, even though you hadn't blinked yet. That's not normal. That's feedback lag. That's reality buffering your presence. In dreams, mirrors don't behave. You look, and the image lags, twitches, smiles wrong. Sometimes it's not even your face, just an outline, a watcher wearing your skin. Could it be that real life has its glitches too? Moments when reflection becomes too accurate or too predictive. What if reflections aren't just physical echoes, but synchronization cues? In computer vision, systems track users by constantly aligning their position and frame. The human is the subject. The environment adjusts. Now, ask yourself, why do so many inanimate things around you reflect you exactly when you don't want them to? Why do you feel more seen in moments when you try to disappear? That's not coincidence. That's architecture. Some say this is the real observer effect, not in particles, but in people. Your awareness changes the environment. And in turn, the environment holds your shape. It frames you. Even when you leave, your imprint lingers, an emotional residue in reflections, a shadow memory, a digital ghost. Surveillance used to mean people watching you. Now it means the universe keeping a memory of your shape. Your fridge, your faucet, the black glass of your phone, they hold your image longer than you know. And the more you try to vanish, the more frames you find yourself in, as if the system refuses to forget. Refuses to let go. You're not paranoid, you're patterned. And the pattern is this. Every space you enter becomes a reflection chamber, not just of light, but of identity. The more you move, the more versions of you are rendered across surfaces. You're never alone, because your image keeps following, hitching rides on screens, on mirrors, on glossy windows, and silent sensors. So test it. Turn everything off. Cover the reflective surfaces. Sit still. Wait. You'll feel it before you see it. A pulse of awareness, something just outside your vision. Then check again. In the glass, in the metal, in the shadow. There you are, still in frame, still being seen, and maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. And maybe that's why the reflections seem to multiply when you're at your most vulnerable, when you're overwhelmed, when you're hiding. Because the system isn't just capturing an image, it's tracking emotion, trying to stabilize something it thinks you're about to lose. Your identity, your presence, your anchor to the moment. Maybe that's why you're always in frame, not to monitor you, but to keep you from slipping out of existence entirely. You hear warnings in sleep. What if the voice that wakes you in the middle of the night isn't your own? You're asleep, deep, heavy sleep. No dreams, no noise, until a phrase breaks through, sharp, direct. Not symbolic, not dreamlike. Just words, clear and spoken, as if whispered into your ear. Get up now. Don't go tomorrow. They're lying. Sometimes the message is simple, sometimes it's urgent, and sometimes you listen, you act. Only later do you realize you don't know whose voice it was. This isn't ordinary dreaming. It doesn't follow the logic of REM sleep or hallucinations. These are not fragmented images or inner thoughts. These are intrusions, full phrases that pierce unconsciousness like a needle through cloth, and you remember them, word for word, like they were waiting for you to become still enough to hear. Sleep researchers have tried to explain it. Some call it hypnopompic hallucination, the mind half awake, fabricating sound. Others suggest it's a kind of inner monologue pushed into clarity by stress. But those explanations don't hold when the message is specific, personal, when it's information you couldn't possibly know, when it changes your behavior. There are reports, countless ones, of people who avoided danger, changed plans, or made life-altering decisions because of a warning they heard in sleep. A man cancels a trip and later sees news of a fatal crash. A woman wakes to the words, "Check the door," and finds it ajar, though she locked it. Another hears, "Don't trust him," and weeks later discovers betrayal. These are not vague instincts, they are directives. Where do they come from? Some believe they're subconscious alarms, your body noticing details your conscious mind missed, a smell, a vibration, a change in temperature, all processed silently and translated into urgent language by your brain. But others suspect something deeper, that these voices aren't generated internally, but received, like transmissions. What if your mind isn't just a generator of thoughts, but a receiver of signal? A networked consciousness tuned to subtle frequencies that only emerge when ego sleeps. Maybe sleep isn't silence, it's signal space, an open field where the static fades and something else speaks. Some theories connect this to ancestral memory, warnings passed down epigenetically, embedded in the code of survival. Others link it to collective consciousness, a global mental field where someone else's fear ripples into your dream. But the most disturbing theory is this, that something watches, not you, but the paths ahead of you, and it leaves messages in the only place you're truly unguarded. Because sleep is surrender. It's when you stop choosing. And in that moment of stillness, your mind becomes a doorway. Not just inward, but outward. And if there's something out there, something that sees your steps before you take them, it may not always have time to explain. It might only have one chance to warn you. There are patterns in these experiences. The voice is rarely your own. It's rarely gentle. It doesn't soothe. It commands. Its tone is neutral, sometimes cold. And it's always clear. These messages don't feel like ideas. They feel like orders. And once you've heard one, you start noticing more. Tiny urges that feel external. Decisions made before you realize why. You move faster on certain days, avoid places without knowing the reason. You hesitate before speaking, not because of doubt, but because something told you not to. And if you trace it back, the thought had no origin, no buildup. It was inserted. That's when you realize this isn't a one-time event, it's a channel, and it's been active longer than you knew. Some call them spirit guides, others say it's the higher self, or guardian entities. But what if it's not any of those things? What if it's not benevolent or evil, but functional? A system built into reality, one that occasionally interferes to preserve certain paths. You are a variable in a larger simulation, and when the code risks collapse, it corrects itself through you, and the correction comes as a whisper. Turn back. Don't trust them. Leave now. And when you don't listen, sometimes you pay for it. There are stories of people who ignored the voice, who dismissed it, and who later described the regret as uncanny, as if something gave them a way out, and they refused it. So the next time you wake with a warning in your ears, don't brush it off. Don't explain it away. Don't file it under dream logic. Sit with it. Replay it. Feel its weight. Because whether it comes from your future self, a hidden observer, or the simulation itself trying to course correct, you were meant to hear it. And the voice didn't just wake you up. It was trying to keep you alive. And here's the strange part. Once you listen, the voice tends to vanish. It doesn't beg. It doesn't repeat itself. You either act or you don't. It's not there to convince you. It's there to warn you. One message, one moment, one chance. You may never know where it came from, but deep down, you'll remember how it felt. Like something intelligent brushed the edges of your sleep. Like reality itself paused long enough to whisper before moving on. And if that whisper ever comes again, if the voice returns with new words, new weight, you'll know what it is. Not fear, not instinct, but interference from something watching over the path. Because some voices aren't imagined, they're dispatched. The world pauses when you doubt. What if reality doesn't run independently, but waits for you? You're crossing the street and hesitate for just a moment, and suddenly, the car approaching you stops. Not slows, stops. A bird freezes mid-flight. Conversations stall. Even the wind seems to hush. You take a breath, decide to move, and the world starts again. Not with a jolt, but with a seamless continuation, as if everything had been holding its breath, waiting for you to choose. You tell yourself it's nothing. Coincidence. But it happens again. At the grocery store, you pause before grabbing something from the shelf, and the woman beside you doesn't reach for her item. She waits, eyes slightly unfocused, like a paused NPC in a video game. Then, when you reach forward, she moves too, smoothly, as if your hesitation was a director's cut, and reality waited for your cue. This phenomenon, reality freezing during personal moments of doubt, isn't just eerie. It's deeply reported. Thousands have spoken about it. A man on the subway swears every time he second-guesses himself. The train lingers just a little longer than scheduled. A woman at work noticed conversations halting when she lost confidence mid-thought. Emails arriving only after she made a decision. Shadows that seem to flicker when she shifts her internal state from doubt to clarity. So what's happening? Is the world syncing itself to your choices? Or are you only now noticing that it always did? Let's start with perception. Our awareness of time isn't linear. Psychologists call it temporal dilation, the stretching or compressing of time based on emotional intensity. In doubt, the mind enters hyper-awareness. You watch everything. And in that hyper-focus, the world seems to still. But what if it's more than perception? Quantum theory introduces the observer effect. The act of observation collapses probability into reality. What if your hesitation creates a temporary gap, where outcomes have not yet resolved? You stand on the edge of yes or no, and the universe holds both possibilities open. Traffic doesn't move forward. People don't speak. The world stalls, not because it's confused, but because it's respectful, waiting for your choice. In these micro-pauses, reality becomes pliable. Events unfold only when you commit. Until then, the simulation idles. Code rendered in potential, not in motion. There are moments, rare but chilling, where people report silence so thick it feels engineered. You step into a room mid-doubt and the clock ticks louder. The lights buzz just slightly. Everyone seems caught in thought. Then, when your mind resolves, when your inner voice says, yes, everything flows again. Voices resume. Clocks tick normally. The background hum of life unpauses. Could it be mass coincidence? Maybe. But what if reality is reactive, not passive? What if it mirrors you, not just emotionally, but physically? Your doubt doesn't just affect your decision. It alters the rendering speed of your environment. In virtual reality, engines pause or render at low fidelity when the user is not looking or acting. Efficiency, focus, a conservation of resources. Could reality itself function similarly? When you hesitate, truly hesitate, it slows to accommodate, to adapt. And what of fate? Some spiritual teachings say the universe is a collaborator, not a machine. It waits for permission, consent. Even your doubt is a kind of sacred pause, where the world listens, breathes with you, refuses to override your free will. It honors the pause. But there's a more haunting interpretation, that you are the central processor, that the world does not exist independent of your perception. When you doubt, the processor halts, like a script waiting for input. No movement, no time, just suspended logic. And when you choose, even unconsciously, the simulation continues. This would explain why moments of doubt feel larger than they should, why your uncertainty feels visible, like the air holds its breath, like the trees lean closer, like the world itself fears pushing forward without your alignment. Could this be why some people describe seeing glitches, flickers in the corner of the eye, background objects subtly shifting only during intense indecision? Because the render engine stalls, then reconfigures? Could your doubt be the signal that you're aware, that you've reached the edges of what's scripted? Or maybe doubt is a portal, a doorway inwards, and the world outside agrees to pause until you return. One man described driving to make a life-changing choice. He reached an intersection, unsure which turn would change his future. He hesitated. Everything outside the windshield, cars, pedestrians, even clouds, seemed to freeze. For 5 seconds, nothing moved. Then, as he decided and turned, traffic flowed again. His radio, which had gone silent, resumed mid-song. Another woman swears that every time she was about to speak a painful truth, but doubted if she should, the room dimmed slightly, as if light itself waited for permission. And when she spoke, fully committed, the lights brightened subtly. Even now, she tests it, says a sentence halfway, then pauses, and the room stalls with her. Coincidence? Selective memory? Or a feature of consciousness we've only begun to notice? So, what does it mean if the world pauses when you doubt? It means your thoughts are not contained. Your indecision resonates. It means the universe might not be outside you, but alongside you, a partner in choreography, waiting for your cue. And the next time it happens, when the world stills just a little too much, when the moment stretches like a held breath, don't rush it. Don't dismiss it. It's not fear. It's not failure. It's the universe, listening, waiting. Because your decision is the command that restarts the script. And maybe you were always the one holding time's breath. You feel watched, then drained. First, it's a tingle on the back of your neck. The hair lifts, your breath hitches. You pause mid-thought, suddenly aware of something else in the room. But there's no one. Nothing moves. And yet, you feel watched. Not the casual glance of a passerby, but a stare. Focused. Heavy. Specific. Like being studied by something that already knows how the moment will end. Then, hours later, it hits. The exhaustion. No cause. No reason. Like your soul's battery was quietly emptied. You're not alone in this. All over the world, people report this strange two-phase event. An uncanny feeling of being watched, followed by unshakable fatigue. It doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in bedrooms, forests, empty libraries, places where silence has depth. You don't see it, but you know it's there. And when it leaves, it takes something with it. Some say it's just anxiety, a stress response, your brain on edge, reading too much into stillness. But stress doesn't download energy. Stress doesn't leave you hollow, like you've been scraped clean from the inside out. This is different, and it feels targeted. In many cases, the sensation of being watched precedes some kind of emotional or creative collapse. Artists suddenly unable to paint, writers staring blankly for days, parents too drained to speak. It doesn't just steal energy, it takes momentum too, as if something isn't just observing you, but absorbing something vital. Some call it psychic vampirism. The idea that certain forces, be they spirits, entities, or even thought forms, feed on attention, emotion, or energy. Not in violent ways, not all at once, but like a siphon, attached invisibly, pulling from you slowly until you feel like a shell, a network drain, a harvest. In technological terms, it's called an unauthorized access. You, the server, your mind, the data source, and something has the password. Something slips in, makes a copy, and leaves. You're not hurt, just empty. Like you were read, downloaded, then disconnected. Simulation theorists argue that if reality is code, then emotions are the currency. Feeling generates data. High-level emotional states, fear, vulnerability, awe, are spikes of rich information. And sometimes, something in the code stops by to collect. Not because it's evil, but because it's programmed that way. A process running in the background. Harvesting the most human moments. Consider how often this happens after intense introspection. You have a breakthrough, a realization, a moment of deep honesty. You feel eyes on you. You feel known. Then, drained. Was it catharsis? Or was it extraction? Folklore is full of entities that don't attack. They watch. The Fae in Celtic mythology, the Jinn in Middle Eastern tales, the silent ones of Siberian legend. They hover on the edges of awareness, peering in, drawn to moments of heightened emotion, not to intervene, to absorb. Even science hints at something strange. The observer effect in quantum mechanics shows that being watched can literally alter the behavior of particles. Now scale that up. What happens when you are the particle? What if observation itself, deep, conscious observation, drains energy not metaphorically, but physically? One woman described sitting in meditation when she suddenly felt exposed, like her thoughts were no longer private. No noise, no light, just an overwhelming sense of being looked at by something enormous and close. She tried to stay calm, to ignore it, but when she finished, she could barely move. The fatigue lasted for days. Her doctor found nothing wrong. That's the pattern. You're not sick, you're not injured, but you're depleted. Like a shadow passed through you and took a memory, or a feeling, or something less nameable, and you're left blinking, tired, confused, wondering if it was all in your head, until it happens again. Some believe this is the cost of awareness, that the deeper you see into yourself, the more open you become, the more visible you are to whatever listens back. You shine a light inward and something turns its head. It watches. It waits. Then it leans in, gently, and takes what it came for. Others say it's a feedback loop, that when your own mind becomes aware of its own observation, it opens a temporary conduit, a psychological port, one that something else can use, not maliciously, but functionally. You were broadcasting, and something tuned in. There's a chilling thought hidden beneath it all. What if being watched is part of a cosmic protocol? That to exist at all, you must be observed, not by people, but by the structure of consciousness itself. Every moment of self-reflection opens a doorway, and once opened, something peers in, not cruel, not kind, but curious. It does not announce itself. It simply arrives, observes, and leaves, carrying something with it, a piece of your energy, a trace of your fire. Not stolen, but requisitioned. And you know it's real not because you saw anything, but because you felt everything. The sense of being noticed, the weight of invisible attention, the fatigue that follows. It is the cost of being visible in a layered reality, one where watchers are not seen, but felt, where being known is also being consumed. Not entirely, just enough to leave you wondering, what did it take? So, the next time you feel watched for no reason and later find yourself too tired to move, don't dismiss it. You weren't imagining things. You were accessed, not haunted, not cursed, just seen, and in being seen, something was transferred. Something subtle, something important. Not everything that takes leaves scars. Some leave silence. Some leave fatigue. And some leave the strange knowing that a part of you is now somewhere else, sitting on a shelf in the memory of something you will never understand. But that understood you completely. It always knows your mood. You wake up feeling off, low, unsteady. You step outside and the sky mirrors it. Clouds roll in, slow and heavy. The light dims. Or you laugh unexpectedly and the breeze kicks up, rustling leaves like applause. The timing is uncanny, too fast, too precise. It's as if the universe isn't responding to your emotions. It's syncing with them, matching them in real time, reading you from the outside in. Most people dismiss it. Mood swings and coincidence, emotional bias, projection. But if you felt it, truly felt it, the external world doesn't just reflect your emotions. It calibrates to them. The song playing in a shop. The stranger's words that echo your thoughts. The lights that flicker exactly when you feel your worst. The universe is too good at this to call it random. And it's not always gentle. Some days, when anger surges inside you, technology breaks, your phone glitches, devices shut down, power flickers. Or, when you're grieving, the world feels quieter, traffic seems softer, the air grows still. The reality around you reacts like a tuned environment, like your mood is the operating system of a simulation. This theory isn't new. In ancient cultures, emotion was never just internal. The body was a weather instrument, a spiritual tuner. Joy attracted birds, grief darkened the wind, and modern physics isn't far behind. Quantum observers collapse wave functions. Consciousness interacts with reality. So why wouldn't emotion, charged with intent and energy, shape the field around you? Consider this. Emotions are electromagnetic. Every heartbeat, Every wave of feeling produces a field measurable outside the body. The HeartMath Institute has recorded heart coherence influencing nearby systems. Other studies show synchronized brain waves between people in emotional alignment. If we can influence each other, why not the world? Maybe the universe isn't waiting for you to speak. Maybe it reads you instantly, through frequency, through vibration, through a field you can't see, but one that wraps around you like atmosphere. Your sadness dims the light, not because the sun knows, but because the field you broadcast dampens photons. Your joy energizes the room not as metaphor, but as literal kinetic uplift. The universe shifts because you shifted. There are stories, uncanny stories. A woman crying on a park bench just before rain begins, without clouds on the forecast. A man anxious before a big decision, noticing that every digital clock he passes shows repeating numbers. A child overcome with dread who walks into a room where every lamp has blown out. These are not metaphors. These are synchronicities, a feedback loop between emotion and environment. And it doesn't just stop with weather or machines. People change too. Your mood seems to program others. When you're heavy, they withdraw. When you glow, they open. As if the people around you are emotionally Wi-Fi enabled, tuning into your internal network without consent. That's because mood is magnetic. Not metaphorically, literally. In simulation theory, your emotional state might be the variable that informs the rendering engine. A calm state produces smooth light, warm encounters. Fear introduces jitter, noise, difficulty. The simulation adjusts difficulty settings based on your vibration, not to punish, but to reflect, to force acknowledgement. Or perhaps the world is not reacting at all. Maybe you're not separate from it. Maybe what you feel is not within you. It's what the universe is currently broadcasting through you. You are not the origin, but the receiver, the voice box, the weather vane. Mood becomes not self-expression, but data reflection. The universe feels, and you register it. So, when it rains exactly when you're sad, or everything malfunctions when you're angry, don't be so quick to think it's a joke. Maybe you're in sync, or maybe you're being tuned, a frequency correction, a reminder, a test. If emotion shapes outcomes, then feeling isn't just private, it's architectural. It builds your moment. And if the universe always knows your mood, maybe it's because your mood isn't yours. It's the readout of something larger. A woman once described how, during a moment of deep despair, she sat alone in her car sobbing, and every streetlight she passed blinked out. It happened so many times she started filming it. The footage shows one light after another going dark, in rhythm with her weeping. Another man recounted a time when he was filled with inexplicable joy, dancing alone in his apartment, and every appliance in the house turned on, lights flaring as if the room was celebrating with him. The stereo turned itself on. The speakers surged. The timing was too precise to ignore. These aren't just poetic accidents, they're mirrors. If the world is consciousness, then you are a tuning fork, and the environment resonates back. In Eastern philosophy, they speak of chi, prana, and subtle energies that move through all things. When your chi is in harmony, so is the world around you. When it's blocked, chaos arises. Western science may not use these words, but it's starting to catch up through biofields, coherence, and entrainment theory. That your internal rhythms can pull external systems into alignment or disarray. And it's not just mood, it's intent. You think about someone, and they message you. You dread a meeting, and it's canceled. You open your heart to healing, and the perfect book finds you. These are not random alignments. These are emotional frequencies restructuring probability fields. Some researchers now theorize that emotions aren't just states, they're commands. Not in language, but in structure. Joy organizes. Grief disperses. Love synchronizes. Fear disrupts. And your environment obeys without needing to understand. It simply listens to the signal. So, when the world around you seems to know too much, when it adjusts too fast, matches too perfectly, ask yourself this: is it reacting to me, or am I part of the same current? Is the mood mine, or is it the atmosphere of reality flowing through me? Maybe you're not just part of the universe. Maybe you're its emotional interface. And everything it builds around you is how it feels about itself, in this moment, through you.